OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
It's 7:30. It is Friday morning, and welcome along to OTB AM. We're with you until 10 this morning, and we've an absolutely packed show coming your way. Shane Hannon, good morning to you.
Morning, how are things?
It feels like about 4 months since I've had the opportunity to say that.
Yeah. Do you know what it was? Do you know
avoiding me?
I have
a bit like Jake Paul and Tommy Fury.
Yeah. Where was I last Friday? I was in Manchester last Friday. Yeah. Do you know what it was last night?
I was at the game.
Not the game there, Stratford End. Yeah. I was watching Cocaine Bear last night. In the cinema. It's a new film.
Right.
That's out. I was in the Lighthouse Cinema in Smithfield. It's kind of like, it's going to be a cult film. Do you know, like Sharknado, where they put two mad things together, cocaine and bears.
Right.
Worst film I've ever seen.
Is it snakes on a plane? So it does exactly what.
It's terrible.
Is that what it's about?
No, well, it's based on a true story where cocaine actually fell into a forest in the 80s, I think it was, and a bear managed to
fell into a forest, as in somebody from a dealer was like flying it over a forest and
accidentally fell out. Yeah. Right. So based on a true story, but the bear goes mad. It's a terrible film, but still everyone was laughing.
The bear starts to get paranoid and like
exactly. Yeah. But it's so bad, it's good. It's one of those kind of films, you know.
Elizabeth Banks is the director.
Yeah. Which surprised me.
I didn't know that she directed.
No, neither did
I. Colm, good morning to you.
Hi, Adrian. How are you?
How are you getting on?
I'm well. Yourself?
You've been an ever-present. We've missed Shane, haven't we?
Look, listen. I've seen plenty of Shane, but sure, you only come in once a week, so that's why you miss him. That's why you miss him a lot. I'm still recovering from one of the greatest disallowed goals I've seen ever. Really, last night in the 12th minute in the Clásico, Real Madrid Barcelona 0-0 at the Bernabeu, and Karim Benzema. Wow! This cross comes inside the box. He chests it and volleys it with his left foot, and he's marginally offside. But the chest and finish is the definition of the work of a complete striker. You've got a career in commentary there. You sound about as excited. Well, do you know who was on commentary? Clive Allen.
Was in fact, do you know, I had it on in the background last night, and I joined it. It must have been just after that. I joined the game last night, but I did think, there's Colm's pal. That's why I started to think about Clive Allen now.
Chest.
Does he watch much of our stuff?
Does he watch much of our stuff?
Give him a shout out. Your mate.
Well, he's on Twitter, so I hope he does. Yeah, but we'd have to probably alert him to the fact that we're talking about him.
Yeah.
But anyway, what a finish. In what was a so-so game overall, but the first half was decent at times. Poor, like a very, very scrappy Sunday League style goal. But this goal for people, I really do encourage people to brighten your Friday morning
top
with
10
a Benzema disallowed goal.
Disallowed goals of all time is inevitable, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%.
Do you know these ideas that he comes up at an editorial meeting and you're like, you know the way you have to find new ways to say, that's a good one. Let's sit on that for a while and have a think about it.
I get that at home as well.
Get that one on a Tuesday, maybe.
These be ideas I be having. Yeah. That was a good slot, actually.
I can't think of a disallowed goal that was brilliant.
I suppose that, a disallowed goal, the reason that a lot of them are so brilliant is because the pressure's off, because oftentimes the player knows it's going to be disallowed, and then you actually see the real technical ability of the player shines then.
With VAR, there's an awful lot more drama around it. Like at that point, up to a couple of years ago, it would have been the decision gets made pretty quickly and you move on with life. Obviously be a bit of a discussion around it, but now it like drags on for a couple of minutes, and that in itself creates big drifts.
This new rule of the delayed offside flag going up just in case that it actually is onside, where do you stand on that? Does it infuriate you? Because I know ex-professionals can't stand it. I've heard Jamie Carragher, Jermaine Genius, to name just two ex-pros who absolutely have a massive disdain for the fact that the flag stays down.
I think it's fair enough.
I think it is fair enough, because otherwise the lines person is interfering with play themselves.
Just don't put the flag up.
Sure, it wouldn't really be illogical. Once you put the flag up, you have to stop the play. Sure.
Yeah. And then you could have ruined the potential goal.
You can definitely hear the frustration the fans in the stadium, because you can almost the groans are almost saying like, sure, we knew that was offside. Why didn't you just give it 15 seconds later? But the logic is fair.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And then you have to apply that logic every single time, even in the instances where it makes less sense.
The only time when it's so blatantly offside, which happens so rarely now because players are smarter to realise that, like, if I'm in any way not marginal, basically they're going to put the flag up.
I have a disallowed goal for you that I think is the greatest. The goal wasn't even given, so it doesn't really count. Pedro Mendes, Roy Carroll, United Spurs. We were talking about it yesterday in the office.
Yeah.
I was playing a match for Monaghan Town a couple of years ago, pre-season game, and I think it was up in Ballynamallard in Fermanagh, and looked over the touchline, and who's standing on the touchline?
Pedro Mendes.
Roy Carroll.
Roy Carroll,
the Joker. He was there, so always be remembered for that moment. He actually was a great keeper, Roy Carroll.
He was.
He's always remembered kind of comedically for that moment.
He is a bit.
Completely for that slip of the hand.
Where did he end up his career?
That's a good question. He went abroad somewhere, didn't he? Was it
Colm would know this as a rabid United fan. More than yourself,
I think. I can tell you he's 45 years old. He's born in Enniskillen. That's off the top of my head. But after Manchester United, he went to, I'll put it out there for the people, West Ham United.
Is that where he finished up?
Forgot about that.
No, he went to several clubs afterwards.
Did he go to Cyprus?
Rangers, Derby County, Odense, Crete, Olympiacos, Notts County, Linfield, FC Mindwell, Dungannon Swifts.
Sort of list here, Shane, but
that's all the clubs he went to after. That's quite impressive.
That's what we're looking
in that Pedro Mendes moment. It's an underrated element of that whole incident was the technique of Mendes.
Oh, fantastic! It was like Rooney West Ham, wasn't it?
Or even the Rooney Middlesbrough goal in the FA Cup at Old Trafford.
Yeah.
But he was faced a touchline with the ball bouncing halfway line. It's just because Roy Carroll made such a hames of it.
Do you know, I've met people who call that a half volley. Do you know when the ball bounces up and it's in the air and you kick it? They call that a half volley. But a half volley is when it's...
You double on it on the ground. What do you mean when it's actually fully bounced up?
Yeah.
That's not a half volley.
I would say that's a half volley.
It's not a half volley. That's a volley.
Are you talking about one that you have to sort of go a bit sideways at to...
Yeah, but if say the ball bounces and it's up in the air there and then you hit it, that's a volley.
That's a half volley.
If the ball bounces, it's not a volley.
No, but if it bounces and it's well up in the air. But if a half volley is like when you're hitting the ball on the half bounce.
But that's interesting.
I know, it's not a volley. If it hits the ground...
just touching the ground as you're kicking it, that's a half volley.
If it hits the ground at all, surely it's not a volley.
Yeah, it's a half, exactly.
It could be a half volley if it's low enough. But if it's bounced, you can't claim volley.
If it bounces and comes up in the
air, you can't claim volley.
Maybe different in Monaghan rules. I was raised in a world where a volley was if the ball drops out of the sky and doesn't touch the ground and you hit it, that's a volley. And if it hits the ground first, it's a half volley.
They were the rules. The ball bounces high enough in the air.
And look at it created a Premier League footballer out of us. Like David Mitre was part of those rules. And look what happened to him.
YouTube comments.
That's
What's a half volley and what's a volley?
The question is it still a volley? So forget about half volley for a second. But you're saying it's a volley even though it's bounced, but it's bounced high enough for you to double on it. I would say that unless it's coming like Colm, if it's come straight from a boot to my boot, that's a volley.
Definitely.
Or a head.
You can't touch the ground first.
Or the keeper can't touch the ground first.
I'd call that a volley. Bouncing up. There's about a second of the ball in the air and then you hit it. That's a volley.
The fact that it's bounced.
Yeah,
the only thing that's a half volley is when you're hitting it when it's just touching the ground.
Exactly, that little sort of double down when it's
which
just
is actually you're actually saying the same thing that we're saying because you're talking about seconds difference.
Okay, so what do you calling the thing where it bounces and stays?
That's striking the ball.
Half volley.
Yeah. No, that's
half
not
volley.
Half volley. No, half volley is when the ball is low enough to the ground, right? So you're kind of getting the momentum of the bounce and the kick at the same time, and that's the momentum.
A half volley is if you're connecting with the ball and the ball is not touching the ground, i.e. if it's any way elevated, that's a half volley. If it's bounced before that,
Dave Kelly, it's a half volley if it bounces but is off the ground.
Yeah, that's exactly. I would agree with that.
Robert Lynch doesn't even know what a volley is. Good man, Shane. Donica says.
I love that he just doesn't even. This doesn't.
Donica's even better. Another day, another dreadful take from Shane. Christ Almighty!
I do feel later today, Shane, you're going to go. Oh, hang on a second.
No, but it's hardly a dreadful take. It was just what I thought was obviously wrong.
Wrong.
Yeah, like it's hardly a take.
I love that you don't read these in advance. Like you're just halfway through the sentence.
It's a take. It's only a take if I'm trying to convince people that that is a. I'm trying to work out what the correct answer is here.
What's a
it's
tracker
not a
mortgage?
take. What's a tracker mortgage?
That's a great ad.
It's not my take. I'm glad to have been enlightened this morning.
Of all the things for you to get animated about this morning, Shane, I wasn't expecting to go on that route either, to be honest with you. But a lot of coverage of the Formula 1 across the back pages today. So if people are interested in that, go and read about it. We'll talk to us about it.
The people want the volley debate.
Do they?
Yeah.
Well, what's more? There's nothing more to be said about that, I don't think, is there?
Terrible return to half volley.
We can come back to some of the comments, but there's nothing more I did.
This was an online debate, I feel, about 6 months ago. And it was on Twitter, and there was a huge cohort of people
headers and
who
volleys.
side one side or the other.
Noz
Choudry is a good
That's a fair
example.
Point, Michael.
You couldn't play that if it fell on the ground, like.
Yeah. No, that's fair. Now, I don't know if headers and volleys, the game that played in council estates across the world, is the actual way of deciphering.
Oh no, I would say that's
where the rules come from.
I don't know if that game that's played worldwide is that what you're saying?
Nods and volleys was the whole rule was if it bounces like that you can't shoot.
Why do you keep calling it nods and volleys?
That's what we called it.
No, that's a
cool. Would you not have just got why?
But why?
It's perfectly good.
Have to be different.
But we called it.
Are you calling it headers and volleys? Heads and volleys.
What do you call
it?
Headers and volleys.
Well, brevity was our thing, so we can concentrate on the football. Nods and volleys. What's the quickest way we can say this? Yeah. And we can go. This is a good point here by Rob Ganaki, or Janaki. Paul McGrath versus the Dutch, USA 94, the greatest disallowed goal. Now, that I was unaware of this goal until as recently as about 2 years ago. But have you seen that? No, that's a volley.
The McGrath one?
Yeah. Have you seen that goal where he flips over?
Did it bounce first?
No, that's what I mean. He didn't bounce, so it's a volley. It's over his shoulder and finishes into the bottom corner. Oh my God, what a beautiful strike.
And from recollection, shouldn't have been disallowed?
I think that's correct.
Sorry, I'm getting ripped apart.
And he totally accepted it as well. He just moved on and was like, okay, fine, fair
enough. There was a place and time where it wasn't de rigueur to challenge what the referee was saying.
Yeah, that's kind of
I'm getting ripped apart here, lads. Shane spent a lot of his childhood inside, so not knowing what a volley is clearly a sign that Shane is an alien. Sorry, but I'm surely not alone here in thinking that when the ball was in the air for a significant portion
I
of
would
time,
say you might not be alone, but there are other incorrect people with you.
Other doses out there with the wrong answer.
Formula 1 is back, Shane.
It's back, sorry, yeah. Excited. Bahrain this weekend. We've got the excitement of Las Vegas to look forward to in the penultimate race of this year. It's not till November, but it's going to be exciting.
What do you mean we've Las Vegas to look for? Oh, sorry.
First Las Vegas Grand Prix.
Yeah. I thought you were saying you were going to it.
No. I'm not going to rule out going to a Formula 1 race this year. Have I ever told anyone about that I went to Spa at one stage?
I'm planning to go to Monaco.
Oh. Wasn't there a lad who said he'd put us up in Monaco? He's got an office overlooking the track, and he's an off the ball fan. He was gonna.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was not aware of this information, but I'm most likely going to Monaco.
Yeah.
For the Grand Prix.
Well, there you go.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Really?
Can we clip this a little bit and ask that guy to
let's tag that guy.
There'll be loads of
who is that? I'd be well up for that, because it's really hard to get good tickets and they're crazy expensive.
Yeah, very, very expensive. But I think he's got an office or something on the track, so you could just watch it.
And would he do like nibbles?
We could do a road trip.
Would he do nibbles and wine and stuff?
For sure, cheese and wine for sure. Yeah. He was suggesting we do a roadshow of sorts, which will be fantastic.
I'm not interested in that.
But then if you do a little bit of work, at least you can.
Well, that's true.
Yeah,
just pretend you're out there.
Exactly. Yeah. Throw in an expense for whatever. Give Shane a break. Sorry, that's the best comment. Give Shane a break. Carbon monoxide exposure has a long-term effect. Don't forget to check your carbon monoxide alarms. Or you'll be brown bread.
Unfunny at the same time.
Apologies. Sorry, Formula 1 is back. I know you've been watching Drive to Survive season 5. Adrian, I haven't looked into it yet, but Aston Martin apparently look very good. We've got Jack Nicholls coming up, BBC Formula 1 commentator later in the show, but Aston Martin look good. I'm a big Aston Martin fan, I have to say.
Right.
I defected from who was I with before? Renault, Alpine, then Daniel Ricciardo left from McLaren.
Jesus, that's an
McLaren. I know.
What's the...
See, I follow a driver, Daniel Ricciardo, and then last season I followed Sebastian Vettel, who has now left Aston Martin. He's retired, so Fernando Alonso is my main man.
He's about 56. How's he still going?
I don't know how he does it.
Yeah.
I suppose they're only sitting in a car.
What's Ricciardo's story? Is he...
He's a reserve driver for Red Bull now. He couldn't get a spot in the grid.
Way.
So he's back up to Verstappen and Checo Perez.
Is that his first year since he has come in?
Yeah, first year being not being on the grid.
It's a Drive to Survive storyline waiting to happen, where a driver has a falling out or gets sacked or whatever happens, and then your man hops in.
In fact, not to spoil the rest of season 5, but I'd imagine it'll come up.
Don't spoil it for me. Like, I'm sort of I have great delight watching this series because I don't really know what's happening, and it's absolutely perfectly pitched to someone like me. It's really good.
Yeah,
it's really good. I have to say, I know we've chatted before about the tennis one, the golf one, but it's really good.
There's a big difference in quality.
It's the right amount of F1. I don't know if it really lends itself to a series like that more so than the other sports as well, but it's so good.
The F1, 100%. And I think does this kind of, I suppose, exaggerate how great it is when you watch the golf and tennis ones? Does it actually help improve the fact that this was the OG in all senses of the word?
Yeah.
Does it only work?
It is.
Is it because of the sport itself that it works so well? Or have they just edited it better?
Possibly. You see, the thing about Formula 1 is a lot of the golfers maybe were quite well known in advance, a lot of the golfers that are being covered, whereas Formula 1 has increased the I guess, the representation of all the team principals and the drivers lower down the grid, a lot of them could walk through a supermarket in London and not be recognised, whereas now, like, Gunther Steiner would not be able to walk anywhere without being recognised. I'm sure he was the Haas team principal, the shitest team on the grid, basically. And now all of a sudden,
I felt Gunther had sort of last season had become a little bit self-aware and had almost stepped back. He didn't feature as much as I wanted him to feature. But
possibly.
Episode 1 this year, I was like, it was himself and your man, the now former Ferrari. Matteo. Like a lot of good insight into them. Somebody says here, by the way, PWGC says that Max Rushton, who presents the Guardian Football Podcast, will adamantly agree with Shane. The half volley is when the ball has just bounced. If you're hitting it when it's bounced up, it's just a strike. Now PWGC, I don't mind saying, that's not what Shane's saying at all. That's the exact opposite.
No, but maybe what he is saying, I don't know what he's saying.
He's saying what myself and Colm are saying.
Right,
which is the opposite of what you're saying.
Yeah, okay. Shane's knowledge of volleys is up there with his American accent skills and fascinating poetry. What else?
You skipped one there.
Listening from Dubai, lads. Can't believe Shane Hanna was let into the building this morning after his Tom Brady impression yesterday. Thank you. I'm glad people enjoyed it. Oh my God, that's so nice. Shane and Adrian are right in what a half volley is. Colm and Adrian are right in what a volley is. It's gone so far beyond that I don't know what I said anymore. Half volley is when the ball is just on the way up, like Shane has said.
There you go.
Right.
So what you were saying was that it could be a volley even if it's bounced, and what me and your man are saying is it couldn't be.
As in bounced, but like it bounced like a second earlier. So the ball's been in the air and you're turning your body and you're hitting it.
Well, if it's just bounced, that's a half volley. But if it's in the air, then that's just a strike.
You're hitting the ball when it's at its apex height or on the way back down.
I don't think it's to do with height. I don't think it's to do with height. It's to do with what it's touched before. Yeah, what's happened before you hit it.
The whole point of a volley is the uncertainty of it.
Look, this isn't a hill I'm going to die on, lads. But I'm trying to find the right answer.
It feels like the reverse lights are on, and I think there's nothing better you could do, Shane, than if we left this segment with you going, do you know what, that was wrong earlier on. It does seem to have sort of motivated people here.
Brian's and nods and vowels man as well. Good to see.
Nods and vowels.
Yeah.
That is like, if somebody in Blackrock was saying that, you'd be saying, come on now.
Did you ever play Belfast? You lads wouldn't have called it Belfast.
That was like ring the doorbell and run away.
Jack the Knocker, as
what?
Some people call it.
We called. Actually, I had this.
Run fast.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Perfect.
Do you know what it was called in Cork? What was it called in your pen?
It's called Belfast.
It was called Runaway Knock.
That's
right in Cork. And I remember telling people about this, just exactly that story being brought up, and then everyone was like, "What? What?"
Would it not be called?
And it was, but it's definitely a Cork thing. Runaway knock.
Knock, run away.
Yeah. What with Knockadally is the other one I've heard that is also called Knockadally. And when I heard that, I was like, that doesn't tell you anything about anything. At least our one is kind of it's explanatory, like it's self-explanatory. I've never heard it called that now. I kind of like Runaway Knock because it lends itself quite nice sentence to say.
Doesn't actually explain what's going on though.
But Knock Runaway does not work as a sentence.
Runaway Knock.
You can't do anything with it. It immediately loses momentum. Runaway Knock's a bit of a poetry to it.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's what we called it and we understood it. So
I definitely understand poetry, thank you, as the listeners well know. What about Tony Yeboah's goal versus Wimbledon? Half volley or strike?
I thought you were bringing that up yourself just to get out of this.
Mark Robinson has commented.
The panic, like,
move on. Tony Yeboah's goal, it was on the way back up, wasn't it? It wasn't.
Which Yeboah's is a half volley. I can tell you, 100%. Yeah, half volley.
A few other things to mention that we might come back during the show. Katie Taylor wants a fight with Chantal Cameron on the May date in Dublin. She's like, screw this, Eddie Hearn. She called him out on Instagram last night. Everybody's been watching a bit of Jake Paul and Tommy Fury from last weekend, and everybody feels like, I kind of feel as if I want to start calling somebody on Instagram now the way things are going.
Go for it.
You know, like £7 million for an 8-rounder where you get thumped around. I mean, I'd probably I'd take it.
The post on Instagram was, it's a bit cringe.
It's not really Katie Taylor's style.
It's not her. It's
not actually her. Is that what you're saying?
It's clearly not her. But it's also the type of thing, like, she's calling out Eddie Hearn, whereas you get the distinct impression that it's of course it's
Eddie Hearn himself actually writing the Insta.
So everyone's like writing articles, being like, Katie's stand up for herself. She's calling out Eddie Hearn. No, this is just the fight that they're able to do in May in the 3 Arena, which is their schedule. So
that's one thing to mention. There was a leak last night from O'Neill's that there was a new. It looked like there was sort of an obscure reference to the fact that they were going to produce a new Ireland jersey, and you could just get a little shadowed snippet of what the crest on the jersey looked like, and it was the old shamrock with the old sort of style crest, and it looked absolutely beautiful, and people are going a bit wild for it, but it seems like that's not going to be the jersey.
Even you, who's not very patriotic, you were.
There's nothing. You don't have to be patriotic to like a nice jersey.
That's mad, isn't it? Colm, what do you think?
What
of
would
that?
be wrong with like that's?
Even Adrian was like.
Don't be trying to bring up a false equivalence here now to get yourself out of your volley half-volley situation.
To be fair, the photo that was put up looked delicious.
Looked very nice.
Very nice jersey. But there was never any suggestion from the company that it was from O'Neill's that it was.
Well, they were saying the Shamrock is back, and what was the context of that? Like, I mean, what do they mean? They also had today's date in it, so I mean, it's done exactly everything they want. We were talking about it this morning. It was a light on Twitter last night, so I'm sure that more on that and on. And then Spygate was the last thing we wanted to mention. The Waterford FC had a tweet up last night to say that they'd found an opposition analyst filming their training ahead of tonight's game against Galway United.
This is juicy.
Yeah,
we want to know. Do they know what club? They obviously know what club it was. We all want to know now.
Well, it was ahead of. I mean, I don't know, but they said ahead of tomorrow night's game. They're playing Galway tonight.
Right.
Those two things are separate bits of information.
Of course they are. That must have been the suggestion by the fact they were pointing out tomorrow night's game. That would make most sense, of course. I know someone in the comments asking, was Johnny Ward the man?
Yeah, I said the first comment this morning, straight in there. Tommy was ready to go.
Per Johnny getting... other people saying it's Johnny as well. I don't think it's Johnny Ward, but look, if you can get away with it, great. It makes sense to get whatever advantage you can get in your opposition. I wouldn't call it cheating, because I mean, it's
a good question.
You can still change your.
If Malik O'Rourke was involved, Shane, that's all I know.
I wasn't going to bring it up.
None of this. Carry on.
I wasn't going to bring it up. I think it adds a bit of crack.
Spice is the word. We can't get through this particular segment without mentioning the word spice.
Spice has to be,
because it adds in a nice little sprinkling of spice. What sort of spice do you think that is? Like a bit of Chinese five spice, or? Yeah,
it's a bit of a spice bag, isn't it?
A spice bag, yeah, good shout.
It's I don't think there's anything wrong with this. I think it's quite hilarious. It's obviously Waterford's post has gone viral online, with people being like, "Oh, this is brilliant." But the League of Ireland needs these talking points, doesn't it?
It'd have been pure Roddy Collins fare, wouldn't it? In fact, he might have done that at some point or another.
You'd like to think so.
There was it always brings to mind the Donegal, the Kerry thing, the Donegal lad up the tree down in Kerry in 2014.
Yeah. I mean, what advantage if you're there for an hour and a half? Of course, you're going to pick up some tidbits.
Thousand Island Spice, says Spectre Core.
Not a bad shout.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you can do it, get away with it. We only find out about the ones that people are caught. So this one, Bielsa, whatever else. How many times have people spied on opposition teams and never been caught? I'd like to know. So.
Espionage in the League of Ireland, says Hill 16, sounds like a Waterford Whispers article, which is appropriate given the nature of who's involved. Go on.
Sorry, Brian Slattery there. Definition of a volley in sport, especially in tennis, which is actually a great example, before it touches the ground, is a definition of a volley, which is absolutely the case in tennis. And I suppose you could use that for football too.
Half volley, the exact same.
Well, there's not really such thing as half volley in tennis.
Is there not?
Not really. It's more of a delicate forehand winner.
No,
a half volley would be not really.
Oh,
not really.
On now.
As in hitting it just as it's touching.
Yeah, like if it touches the ground, it's a ground stroke, really.
That's a half volley.
I mean, it's a you could say a deft.
Well,
forehand or backhand.
So half volley in tennis has its own Wikipedia page. So I think you're.
I think you're wrong. I would say like a half volley might be when you just think it with your wrist.
I wouldn't say. Where's this coming from, Shane?
I wouldn't say there's much of a half volley. Yeah, well, the half volley in football for sure.
It's the exact same thing.
Recant from this position, and I think you're aware. No,
I would say I don't think so. No,
it's just hit the ground.
Now, if I thought I was wrong, but
I think in mature recollection.
I'm sure I could be professionally proved wrong. Yes, but I wouldn't. I suppose a flick of a wrist at the net when the ball bounced just before. I guess is a half
ball
volley.
in backcourt where it comes down and you're just managing to just get back to it. The only thing you do is just manage to get something on it just as it's bouncing.
That at back of the court, I would definitely say is a ground stroke.
Oh no!
But I mean, if it's professionally the case, I'd be proven wrong. But I would say
Dave is on my
dinky one.
He says every shot that bounces in tennis is a half volley. Yes,
that's undeniable. Yeah,
now we're
that's
talking.
undeniable.
Yeah,
but no, I would say I wouldn't really label many shots in tennis a half volley. The only one would be like a little dinky wrist shot at the net,
I think,
just before it bounces.
I await your statement on Twitter later on where you recant from this position. You could do a joint statement yourself and Shane.
As I've stated, I just wouldn't.
No, I know you're too stubborn to accept that.
No,
whereas I'm ready to admit when I'm wrong.
Adrian, I'm the least stubborn person I know.
Okay. Colm, thanks a million for coming in.
Listen, thanks for having me. Really, thanks for having me. You make it so easy. Thank you.
5 to 8. Here's what's coming up between 9 and 10 this morning with Ronan O'Gara standing by to talk all things Six Nations and plenty more as well. Gilly Flaherty, former England international. It's a really interesting weekend in the WSL, more so in the County Cup with the Chelsea Arsenal renewal there. So we'll get into that. Jack Nicholls is going to talk to us about Shane's Love, Formula 1 from the BBC. The season starting up again this weekend. You had to be there. It's going to be very special. We've seen his picks and they're very good from Noz Choudry, the football writer and culture writer. And he's really thoughtful about this one. That's coming away at 9. And then we have Kevin Kilbane, who myself and Colm caught up with yesterday to talk about his point about GA goals and the skill of them from last weekend. He'd been in touch with the football pod about that, so we'll talk to him about that. We'll talk to him about Everton's chances of staying up and a few more other bits and bobs as well. So that's all coming your way. Do keep in contact with us over the course of the morning. You are watching OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now. It is 5 to 8. Ronan O'Gara, good morning to you.
Morning. Hi Adrian, how are you?
How are you keeping?
Good, very good. Yourselves?
Good, very good. We were talking to you last week about Ross Byrne. Colm was asking you whether he should go out and try and shoot the lights out, and I'm paraphrasing, but you had said no, he shouldn't try and force it, be solid, play his own thing. How was he?
Yeah, he was good, I think. It was, I think he, in terms of selection, he was playing for me with 2 12s. Bundyaki and McCluskey are very much for me in the mould of number 12s. One is excellent and McCluskey is trying to get to that level for me. In terms of someone at 13 who can get the ball to the far 5 metre channel, you were minus that in your team, which is a big negative. I think it was exactly the case with Jonathan Dante when he wasn't playing for France, and sometimes the case when your value goes up when you don't play, and we have seen that in this Six Nations when Gary Ringrose doesn't play. You see the value to the team, what he brings. So from Ross Byrne's point of view, playing with McCluskey, playing with Bundyaki, it's a direct route, but when you're trying to manipulate defences and you don't have an outside break and at test level defences are smart, it was probably a lot easier to foil Ireland's attack than obviously it would have been if you had a Ringrose, a Henshaw, for me, an Earls, an Osborne, a Jimmy O'Brien potentially, even though I don't think he has played 13, but I could be corrected on that. How you set out your team to attack, when you strip it back, Ireland, for me, had 2 12s playing there. But that wouldn't have helped Ross Byrne.
So we're potentially haven't even seen the best of him yet.
Of course you haven't, because I think it's his first Six Nations start and the guy's 27, so in that position you're at your best at around 30, but you need to be playing 3 or 4 games. So much of the first 10 games in green is trying to get used to that level, because it is very different to club rugby. There's no doubt about it. At club rugby, potentially in both teams, you could have, even on a good day, on a high level performance game, you could have 3 or 4 guys that you could find a lot of weaknesses in. In test games, it's very difficult to find fault with a lot of players. What happens at test level is that after 60 or 70 minutes, mentally one of the teams breaks, and the lead changes hands quite a bit. And I would be in agreement with, I suppose, a lot of the feedback from the game was that Italy's attack was the best attack that Ireland have faced, and it was because in the first 90 seconds Italy could have scored a chance, or tried a chance to rip Ireland apart, and it came unstuck, and then Ireland with their class went up the other end and had a try disallowed. But then a minute later off the restart, they go down the short side and they score a try. That's what great teams do. They get a moment and they capitalise. So I think, you look at it, there was Casey, Byrne, McCluskey, Aki. Potentially, I think when you're the manager, the coach, you'd be going, these are my squad players. These are brilliant for the games that we need if we're going to win a World Cup week after week. But as we all know, there's huge competition at 9, at 10. At 9, at 10, at 12 and at 13, because obviously I think Ireland would go, Henshaw 12, Ringrose at 13, Aki at 12, Ringrose at 13, Henshaw 12, Aki at 12, Henshaw at 13. So you have a strong argument for going, well, that's our third midfield playing there.
On just one last one for me on the Ross Byrne thing, and just the point that you made there about taking it to the line. Andy Dunn was on with Joe during the week, and he was talking about that the difficulty of playing 10. He said it was the hardest skill, that sort of taking it to the line, fixing it to the defender, getting the ball away as quick as you could as a 10. He said that for him that was always the hardest skill, and he had the ultimate compliment for Byrne, which was to say that Finn Russell, Sexton, Garbisi and now Byrne are the best at playing that he's seen in the game, that Ntamak is less good and that Farrell and Bigger are not good at that, and as I said, that he himself found it the hardest skill to master. What are your thoughts on that on that bit in the Byrne context?
Yeah, but I think that was obviously something that wasn't in his game 24 months ago, and he's worked hard on it. He's seen the pictures that he needs to get better at to give not alone himself a chance of shining a little bit better or brighter, but also for engaging defenders on the inside. It's a huge area of the game, or I wouldn't say an illness in the game, but one of the work-ons for any coach is that there are times when you're watching footage and you're not too sure of the goalpost on the sideline or the goalpost north-south. So if you're to track me in my thinking here, when you look at body shapes of an awful lot of players and releasing the pass, if you didn't have a side-on view of the footage you're looking at, you'd be thinking that the goalposts are on the sideline because that's where all their hips are pointing. So
because it's safer.
Because I think they have a completely different mental image in their head, and B, players are very good at looking after themselves, and I'm all right, Jack, but if the 9, the 10 and the 12 are across field, the 13 is going to get absolutely melted, which essentially isn't the 9 and 10 or 12's problem if he doesn't have I suppose, an open or a caring mindset for what's the best for the team. They can get away with probably having time on the ball, but the 13 and 15 are going to get 4 defenders. They're going to get chopped, and there's going to be 2 people around them, which means that you have a high likelihood that you'll probably lose the ruck, or you get penalised for holding on in the tackle.
Ronan, we've had a lot of the discussion in the last week or so since the game about the decision making in terms of going for touch or going for the posts, and look, James Ryan did a brilliant job, I thought, as captain, and that's not an easy decision. For those of us who have never or will never set foot on a top level rugby pitch, just how much of that decision making process is down to the number 10 in terms of being comfortable with the potential kick for posts, and how much is on the captain? Like, I'm sure there are discussions in the dressing room before the game, but I guess a lot of it has to be reactive.
Yeah, well, if there's discussions in the dressing room before the game, it's too late. This needs to be sorted out, obviously, as a work in progress and a general team, which I suppose is consistent throughout the season. But what is where it becomes a little bit grey, and grey is probably a poor word to use, but where it becomes interesting is the fact that what's the energy like in the opposition? What's the energy like in my team? What's the scoreboard looking like? Is there a yellow card involved? So there's potential areas that cannot be discovered till the I suppose the heat of battle So I suppose the parameters for the discussion are quite narrow, yet the one thing you're looking at, I suppose, is body language of the opposition. Are they vulnerable, or are they? Is it better to keep the scoreboard ticking? And I think that's easily sorted out between obviously the kind of, I suppose, the leader, the captain, but also the goal kicker, but also maybe one or two others that should have an input. There shouldn't be just two people having an input. I think that, because if one of them is the captain and the other is the goal kicker, it becomes a little bit of a one-on-one, which is not good. The kicker should be not the decision maker in that. It should be the leaders of the team.
Even when the kicker is sometimes the key leader.
Yeah, because I think there are different times throughout the season or in games where the leader, the kicker, will feel bulletproof. Yet there are times it's impossible for anyone, no matter how good they are, to not have a downward spiral in his performance or in his game. It's at those moments where the leaders of the team need to go, okay, it's best for the team, irrespective of how the kicker is feeling, that we're keeping the scoreboard ticking. If you're leaving that solely to the goal kicker, for me, it's a poor choice.
Can I just ask you one, Ronan? We were touching yesterday, and it kind of struck me in terms of the Irish rugby team as well. We were talking about Casemiro and the impact he had at Manchester United, and it's similar with that great Liverpool team of the last number of years as well, where they win a foul or for small moments on the pitch, they're celebrating, giving it loads. Creates a bit of a bond with the supporters as well. But it struck me at Wembley last weekend, Casemiro, barely celebrates his goal and yet shepherds the ball out for a goal kick and gives it large to the United fans behind the goals. I've noticed it with this Irish team in this Six Nations as well. They seem to really celebrate the small moments. Is that something that strikes you as a definite sign of a strong winning mentality?
Yeah, because obviously the environment is humming. I think what is great, it's not the team that's humming, it's the squad that's humming, it's the group that's humming. It's incredibly difficult to get into that team, even to get into that 23, and that's exactly what you want. The team now has momentum, it's driving itself. They have huge confidence from their, I suppose, performance record and from their performance data, but also of their capacity to win games no matter how. In November, games at home, they were arm wrestled. We haven't had a tight game yet in the Six Nations. Some will say Italy is a tight game, but when you pull away by 14 points, that's impressive when you're under the pump with a lot of players that probably, when Ireland have a first, I suppose, pool of players, that they may not be near that 23. So strength and depth is at an all-time high. I think the atmosphere seems like an all-time high, and now they have serious options in so many positions, where we've got to a point where one of Ireland's best players, and will remain one of the best players, or two of their best players, in Henshaw and Tadhg Furlong, Tadhg Byrne. The show's gone on, and that's exactly what happens.
Just as you mentioned that, it brought to mind Brian was on again during the week, and he was talking about the positive mindset in the group, and like that they're not thinking about just getting past quarter final. Like, I don't know if they're talking overtly about it, but that his feeling was that as a mindset they're thinking about winning the World Cup. Does that differ from what the experience of your days in an Ireland shirt?
No, I don't think so. No, I think it's easy to talk, that's what the public do and people outside of the camp do, but they'll have their own goals internally. I wouldn't think they're talking about, they know what the long-term goal of the team is, but talking about the World Cup internally is completely irrelevant. They're on the cusp of potentially doing something that very, very few Irish teams have done. So short-term, medium-term focus is trying to beat Scotland and trying to beat England. Then there'll be a complete reassess. There'll be more rugby played, and then in a few months' time, they'll make a plan for winning the World Cup. But they also know that what they've embedded in the past towards what they want to achieve next September, October. But you can't just go from hurdle 2 to hurdle 8 without jumping the other hurdles. So they seem to be stealing a lead in a lot of teams in their mental preparation, but also in their physical performances. So I think it's an awful lot of wasted energy if you're talking about winning a World Cup now.
Does this team feel... there was interesting quotes I read from Paul O'Connell this week, Ronan, where he was talking about, he said, in terms of cramming, when he was a player for the Irish international team, he said, we tried to cram for the exam a little bit back in our day, the week of big games. For a lot of these guys, the work is done. Do you kind of understand what he's saying there in terms of this team maybe feeling different to previous eras?
Well, what is happening now is that they're being incredibly consistent. Okay, so the World Cup is a different form, obviously, and the brutality of having to win 7 or 8 games is in a short space of time. That's a different test, and that's a test that can wait. But also, what is very evident now is that they have, irrespective of who plays in the jersey, a certain standard of performance, and they have, I suppose, performance measurements within them that they have to meet to achieve what they want to achieve. But I would say it would be very enjoyable also being an Irish player at the minute with the detail and capacity, or the capacity of the coaches that they are working with. You know, it's slipped under the radar. Well, maybe at home you speak about a lot, but like someone like how Paul has transformed the way the Irish forwards are playing. They're very, very rare you'd see a turnover from a structural error. Their skill set is hugely impressive. Their capacity to run onto the ball, to win collisions, their angles are very, very interesting. Their fitness is through the roof. Their capacity to do, I suppose, high speed, repeated efforts is very, very interesting to watch. And their, I suppose, capacity to challenge the defence wherever there is space and moving that ball is what we haven't, I suppose, seen consistently from previous teams.
Are you? Do you pay any attention what's going on down in New Zealand the last couple of days?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, obviously the Crusaders got a belt in Super Rugby at the weekend, and then they're going to announce their new coach. So in the next 6 weeks, is it?
Yeah, it looks that way. Yeah, is your pal getting in at last?
We don't know. It's obviously a very competitive job, so no idea.
Is it unfair on Ian Foster, Ronan? And I mean that in terms of, you know, he's got a World Cup to prepare for, and yet the timing of it maybe seems a bit strange. Like, could all this not have waited until after the tournament, or am I being a bit naive there? Is that too late?
Yeah, I think that's the way professional sport is. You know, you can say Ian Foster has been involved for so many years, an assistant, then as the main man. This is his window to do something, irrespective of how it goes. He's on to a new challenge. That's the way the game is going now. So much of professional sport is managed in advance to get your planning right, to get the preparation right. So I think from, I suppose, where we all started off in terms of this next coach for New Zealand, it's been a probably saga that has gone on too long and has dragged on, and now there will be certainty on it. And but I would agree with you, going forward is probably a better way of getting the timing right.
Does seem to be a weird split, obviously, between the union there and the players as well. So see how that pans out over the next while. Ronan, we did want to ask you, a terribly sad week again for Irish rugby with the passing of Tom Tierney and Brian O'Brien. Brian particularly would have been coming into and you would have known him prior to that, I'm sure, but coming into the Irish scene around the time that you would have come in.
Yeah, geez, it was 2 text messages. One was obviously more brutal than the other, and the fact that Tom was obviously my age, and then Brian O'Brien was a great age, but a fit man and a strong man and a sound man, and it poses a lot of questions in your head when you receive news like that. I think that everyone was caught badly when the text about Tom came through, because it was a huge shock. It's incredibly sad, obviously, for Mary and the kids, and obviously for Brian O'Brien's extended family, and family, and they're very tight family. So my thoughts are definitely with both families this week. Brutal times.
Yeah, it's terribly sad. Brian particularly always struck me as been in and around press conferences, covering games at that time, that there was a bit of a fatherly figure almost to him. Was that overstating it, or what was your experience of him?
No, you're right, yeah. Very caring man, very decent man. Great sense of humour, good man for a sing-song. But also would pick you up if you were to, if you'd overhear you not saying please or thank you. Little things like that when you're being shaped as a young player, and big on discipline, big on respect. A hard, a fair, a decent man, and would square up to you too. Loved the kind of the physicality of when we were in our prime as players. He'd have no problem dropping a shoulder into you to make sure you were on guard. But it's hard to comprehend. It's a little bit like, like Axel, you still think you're going to see the guy next month.
Yeah, very sad. And as you said, our thoughts with both of their families this week. Ronan, thanks a million. Good luck against Poe tomorrow. We'll talk to you about that down the track. Thanks a million.
Cheers, lads. Thank you. Have a good Friday. Thank you.
Ronan O'Gara on the line there from La Rochelle. A lot of interesting stuff to say. We never even got a chance to ask him about the volley, half-volley conversation.
It's driven the YouTube commenters demented.
Yeah, what's the latest?
Good and bad.
A bit of compliment. Hang on there now. Hang on. Chris says, lads, Shane is the sole reason I tune in. The lad is a national icon at this stage. Lay off him.
Thank Chris, you legend.
To read that comment.
I'll send you that 20 quid in the post. Good man.
Headers and volleys, says Led Zeppelin. Heads and volleys. I call it headers and volleys.
No. That's we're getting into semantics there, really, aren't we? I mean, Colm's one was the one that was wrong.
So much wrong. The fact that he didn't even know there was a half volley in tennis, Shane, to me was like
that's bizarre for a tennis fan, Bit
of an eye opener, like.
He's not here to defend himself, but still.
No, that's the best way to have it. 17 minutes past 8. You're watching OTB AM. We're with you right through until 10 this morning. We've Kevin Kilbane coming a little bit later on to talk about the GA soccer crossover. We'll have our Friday Firepit. I'm not sure exactly what's in the mixer for the Firepit this morning. I'm not sure anybody knows, but we'll find out a little later on when Kathleen and Cameron join us in studio for that. We're going to have Jack Nicholls to talk Formula 1 from the BBC ahead of the opening weekend, and we're going to have Noz Choudry, who'll be taking on You Had to Be There, and a very special one it is as well, coming your way just after 9 this morning. But you're watching OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now, and after this short break, Gilly Flaherty on the return of the WSL.
OTB AM. Off the ball.
Chow time, Joe, matters. Chow time matters, let me tell you that.
But you always see pizza in a dressing room afterwards, still. Is pizza that much better than fish and chips?
No, that's what I'm saying. Fish, a bit of cod. How shebang, like?
Well,
fresh cod.
Did you have batter on your cod? By any chance?
Fresh cod.
Oh man, you're actually making me hungry here. I haven't had dinner.
Subscribe now to the OTB Football Podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts, and download the OTB Sports app.
The Heineken Champions Cup is back. Leinster take on Ulster in the round of 16, Saturday, April 1st at 5:30 in the Aviva Stadium. Join the Sea of Blue for this massive inter-provincial clash. Tickets on sale now at leinsterrugby.ie. Terms and conditions apply.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
Right, it's nearly 20 past 8. You're watching OTB AM. Gilly Flaherty, welcome back to the show. Good morning to you.
Hello, good morning.
Settle a debate for us. I mean, I don't really think it's a debate, but you might sort of give us your view on it anyway. We've been having a debate in the loosest possible fashion today as to what constitutes a volley. Shane, on your screen there, thinks that, you know, the ball is allowed to bounce, and once it's reached its apex again, it's back into volley mode. I would have a different view that once it's hit the ground, unless it's a half volley, it's no longer a volley. What's your opinion on it?
Yeah, no, a volley, you can't have a bounce. Like when this bounce, that's mean it's reset, like it's done. You know what I mean? It has to be straight in the air, connection, no bounce allowed. If it bounces, no, you can't claim a volley after
Adrian
that.
Set me up here because I had accepted I was incorrect, and now he set me up once
Gilly,
more.
I'm not going to lie to you. This is the first time he's really sort of, you know, he's retrofitting his excuses.
And Gilly's a former professional footballer. I'm going to accept her opinion here completely. That's fact.
Right, we've so much to get to here. The international window done, the FA Cup break done, and we'll spend a bit of time talking about the County Cup final on Sunday maybe to begin with, and it's a big focus. And the last time we chatted was just after the semis, if I'm right. So it's Arsenal-Chelsea at Selhurst Park on Sunday. Given what's looked like a general slide in form, and maybe understandable with injuries, etc., they've lost a little bit of touch in the WSL. This has suddenly become a very important game for Arsenal.
Yeah, it's a huge game because realistically it's the only thing they can really win now. Obviously they are still in the Champions League. You could say also they're still in the title race as well. But I just think for them, obviously the way I went to the game last week when they lost to Chelsea in the FA Cup, and I mean they just looked like a team that was playing with not much confidence, not the Arsenal that you used to see with playing out from the back confidently and creating a lot of chances and being clinical. And I know obviously they're missing Miedema and Beth Mead, who are two huge players for any team to be missing. But yeah, for me, it's a must-win game for them. Obviously, playing at Arsenal previously, we prided ourselves on winning trophies, and Arsenal haven't really done that in the last few years. So yeah, there'll be pressure on them to get a reaction as well from last weekend and get the win on Sunday.
They're brutally efficient and we are not, were the words of the Arsenal manager, Jonas Eidevall, after that game, which, you know, in one regard, I'm sure he didn't mean it, but it does feel like a pretty damning indictment and a very hard thing to turn around over the course of a few days. Having been at the game, how does he turn it around?
It's difficult because I don't feel like Chelsea were that great either on the day. And speaking to Chelsea fans afterwards, like Chelsea, I'd say probably sat in second, third gear all game. It was a bit of a scrappy game, but it's what you expected. Players had just come back from an international break. Players were tired. It wasn't exactly electrifying, but Arsenal had two chances in the first half, a chance within the first few minutes to go 1-0 up. But they didn't take their chance. And I just felt like with Chelsea, you know that they're going to keep continuing to create, and you know that, for example, Sam Kerr, she's only going to need probably 3 chances maximum, you know, and she's going to put one of them away. Where I feel like Arsenal don't have that necessarily at the moment. I don't feel like Blackstenius, the centre forward, has got a lot of confidence, obviously, which is natural after what happened in the January transfer window. But I just feel like Arsenal need to be braver to get on the ball. I felt like the 2 centre-backs for Arsenal, when they was getting it, players were running away. It seemed like players were scared to get on it because Chelsea's press was quite strong. And, you know, as soon as Arsenal got the ball, there was a player around them. But I just don't know. I don't know whether Arsenal were playing with, obviously, the pressure last weekend because before the international break, they played Man City away and they were terrible, like probably the poorest I've seen Arsenal play. So they probably had that pressure to know that they needed to have a reaction and a better performance. But yeah, for me, I just think in that game last weekend, Chelsea were the ones who looked the most. They were clinical, but they looked the most threatening as well. And when they was going through, you sort of was banking them to put it away. So yeah, I don't know. I just feel like he needs to probably let the shackles off a little bit and give him more confidence to play.
I'm actually, from what you're saying there, almost a little bit more hopeful for Arsenal fans. But, you know, you mentioned about Chelsea sort of been in second or third gear. So is that sort of, that you can look at that two ways, obviously, with the easy ability to slip it into fourth or fifth, or what's your view on that?
I just feel like with Chelsea, Emma's got the mentality in them where they're winners and they find a way to win. It might not be pretty, but they find a way to win, and there's never any doubt from going into a game that they're going to win. And I just felt like Jonas done an interview afterwards where he sort of just said, we're getting closer to like nicking one off Chelsea. And it was sort of like, I was a bit taken back by that reaction, because playing for Arsenal, not once when I was at Arsenal did we ever look at another team and go, oh, we're getting closer to beating them. We were the champions. Do you know what I mean? We was the ones who, we never went into a game thinking, oh, we're getting nearer. Like, especially not against our arch rivals and one of the London teams too. So I don't know. There needs to just sort of be a confidence instilled back in with Arsenal that you want to be the best in the league. You want to be the best in London as well. You know. But Arsenal playing in a lot of cup finals as well as Chelsea, but Arsenal have played in a lot of cup finals. So it is a cup final, it's a one-off, and you're hoping that a lot of players get up for the game and leave everything on the pitch.
Gilly, when I look at the schedule for March, it is a bit of March madness over the next few weeks. You've got 7 games in 25 days, I think it is, for both Chelsea and Arsenal. Which squad do you think is better equipped to cope with that workload?
I think Chelsea's is. I think Chelsea, obviously at the moment, they're missing Frank Kirby and Harder as well, who, when you compare it, Harder and Frank Kirby are just as important and just as good as players as what Beth Mead and Miedemar are to Arsenal. But you have players coming in for Chelsea who are making the team stronger, you know, and so when Frank Kirby comes back and when Harder comes back, Chelsea, their forward attacking line are going to be frightening. But I do think Chelsea have got the better squad, and I do think with Emma, it's good because she rotates players a lot and she gives players a lot of opportunity, so that when it does come to rotating, especially through heavy periods, that the quality of the team doesn't dip and players know where they need to be and they're match fit, you know, as well. They're not just sitting on the bench. Where I think with Arsenal, when you do make a couple of changes to the team, you notice the drop in performance and you notice the drop in quality, where I don't think you can say that about Chelsea.
Is that volume of games a problem in your experiences for a professional footballer, or is it something that you look forward to because games usurp training in terms of enjoyment? Like, I have a quote here from Maheda Malongo, the Professional Footballers Association chief executive, which was not long ago. He says, this is not a shoe factory. You're talking about human beings. Sometimes I get the feeling that we are moving in the direction that footballers are just machines. Is it kind of heading in that dangerous direction? Too many games in too short a space of time?
No, I agree with that. I think I don't know what the issue is in regards to the format for the WSL, but you think, for example, you take Liverpool, who weren't in the FA Cup last weekend. It's been a month since they last played a game of football, you know, and we're mid-season. So it's really hard. I think the best period for teams was obviously before this last international break, because we seem to be getting at least 1, maybe 2 games a week. But there has to be a line as well. Like, for me as a footballer, I preferred games because it meant I trained less. So I prefer playing matches all day, every day. So when we used to have a weekend and a midweek, for me, that's my bread and butter. You know, I love playing football and I love the game, the matches. So I preferred that, but then you've got to look at, I also then, when it comes to international breaks, I obviously got a rest during that period because I weren't away. Whereas players are now going away and then they're coming back and they're potentially doing 2 games a week. And obviously, Luke's talking about Chelsea and Arsenal being in the Champions League too. It is difficult. And obviously, what happened with COVID, the fact that there's a tournament, obviously we've got the World Cup this year, we obviously had the Euros last year, we've got the Olympics next year, and then it's not going to be to the following year. I think it's the Euros again, and then it's a break. So you're looking at these players, some of them are going back to back. They might be getting 2 weeks off at the summer at most. And they're still expected to perform at a high standard. And yes, of course, everybody's fortunate enough to say that football is their job, you know, like I pinch myself to say that I've done that. But at the end of the day, we are humans and players need to be looked after. And it's a physical job, you know, it's a very physical job. And obviously with Chelsea and Arsenal playing in the Champions League, that's another step up as well, like physically. So it takes its toll.
Even with jet lag, she's better than you was the chant. I'm sure you heard it when you were at the game last week from the Chelsea fans to the Arsenal fans. And we haven't mentioned her name yet, but we did talk about the Chelsea goal threat, and she definitely loves a goal against Arsenal as well. Sam Kerr, what are they going to do about her?
It's difficult. I said on Monday on a podcast, they said, how do you deal with Sam Kerr? And I said, it's hard. Sometimes you just can't deal with her. Like, she's not just a number 9 that sort of stays central and just holds up the ball. She moves across the whole line. She'll drop into midfield. She'll sit in the pocket between the midfield and the defence. She'll run on your back shoulder. She's to get the ball wide. And if I'm Chelsea and I'm obviously Emma and I'm saying get the ball wide and just get the ball in the box of Sam, because even when you think she's not going to get there, she gets there. Like, she's so physical. She can out-jump anybody. And it is difficult to keep her quiet, but probably the better solution is to try and stop the service to her. You know, there's only so much defenders can do to stop her in a game. And it's ultimately a 1v1 at the end of the day in regards to that. But obviously you're looking at the centre-backs, obviously Leah, if she comes up against Leah, or Rafa on the other side, she makes it difficult for him because she doesn't just stay central and is just easy to be picked up. She moves across the whole line. So for me, it'd be, can we try and stop the source of service at point rather than trying to stop her when she has the ball?
Well, it'd be interesting. Easier said than done, I suppose, is the point. The last time we were on, we did chat a good bit about Katie McCabe as well, and whether she's been punished around all the transfer rumours. Obviously, there was the chat about the chest infection, and that certainly seemed to explain some of her absences, maybe from the Arsenal team at that stage. She did obviously start last weekend. Start again this weekend. Is that all? I think I asked you this exact question the last time, and we were hopeful more than not. But is that all done and dusted now and back to normal with Katie, or what's your view?
Yeah, I think he knows he needs to play her anyway. And I think it's silly in women's football if you potentially holding something against a player. If they wanted to go, obviously, she never really come out and said anything about it. But at the end of the day, she's still your player, you know, and you want. She's a very good player, so you want to get the best out of her. So pushing her to a side or not playing her just don't make no sense for Arsenal when they need her. I think obviously she didn't play in the West Ham game, and then people were saying obviously why she's not playing. Obviously she come on, but then against Man City she didn't play, and then she come on, and people were like that game needed a bit of fight, it needed a bit of grit, it needed Katie, and she probably come on. She should have started the game. And then obviously last weekend she started the game in midfield, and she give him that tenacious, put your foot in, the making it tough for Chelsea, a bit like what Erin Cuthbert does for Chelsea. That's what Katie was doing for Arsenal. For me, she has to play because she's probably one of only a few players who are actually showing fight and sticking their foot in and not making it easy for Chelsea. So yeah, for me, he has to play her.
And has a bit of versatility as well, if needs be. Everything is pointing to a Chelsea win.
For me, yeah, I think Chelsea are the favourites going in, but at the end of the day, it's a cup final, and you don't know who's going to turn up and how players are going to be. So for me, I'd say Chelsea, but I don't think you can write Arsenal off in cup finals.
Manchester United could move 5 points clear at the top of the WSL this weekend. Gilly, Leicester City struggling at the moment, but they've won 2 of their last 3. Like, these are always dangerous games for table toppers, aren't they? Because complacency can set in, and Leicester really, really fighting for everything they've got.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just talking about, obviously I've talked about the Liverpool-Leicester game. Probably is a game when Liverpool thought that they was just going to, well, they should have beat Leicester, because if you're looking at the position they are in the league and probably the players that they've got as well. But obviously in that game, I watched that game, Leicester just had that fight about them, and obviously Willie's got them very organised, very disciplined. I don't necessarily say they create a lot, but I think set pieces will be huge for Leicester going into this last period. But they are only 1 point behind Reading, you know, and obviously Reading have got West Ham, obviously who are above them. But for me, it should be a clear Man United win. But sometimes the WSL don't work like that, and especially coming off of the back of, obviously you had the FA Cup last weekend, you've also had the international break, but obviously WSL is a completely different mindset, and obviously Man United are potentially, could go 5 points clear and be at the top. So there is that sort of, they're going to want to win because they want to get that advantage on Chelsea. But I don't think Leicester will just sit back and make it easy for them.
And you've City Spurs as well, so potentially goes along expected lines as well. We'll catch up again over the next few weeks. Gilly, thanks a million.
No worries, thank you.
Thanks a lot. Former England footballer Gilly Flaherty on the line there to look ahead to the County Cup and the WSL for this weekend as well. Do keep your comments coming in on that or any of the other topics we've been chatting about this morning. The heads and volley stuff has really got people motivated. Is that fair enough to...
Yeah, Aisling Riley as well, our own, has replied on Twitter to the clip of the debate this morning on What a Volley. She says, I agree with Shane Hannon. I always got on well with Aisling, always liked her.
Yeah.
And this is just confirmed.
But her judgment, you would say, is in question a little bit.
No, brilliant judgment.
Particularly that you have since recanted those comments and said that you were in fact wrong.
See, I'm thinking, do you remember the Wayne
Don't
Rooney...
do another flip-flop here now.
Do you remember the Wayne Rooney goal against West Ham from the halfway line?
Yeah.
Where the ball... It wasn't a half volley in the natural sense. It was the ball bounced up and then he smacks it.
Famously not a volley.
Or a half volley. So are we calling that a strike? So what?
Well, one thing we know for sure is
my question is, what are we calling that?
If within the rules you could stretch it to a half volley, definitely not a volley.
I would argue it's more of a volley than a half volley because the ball is bounced and eon ago.
Well,
I'm not saying it's a volley either, but what are we calling it a strike?
It'll be either neither or a half volley. It's definitely not a volley.
Oh, Jesus, I don't know.
I've just tried to put an end to this debate by looking it up on. We've had enough of this. Dictionary.com. Right, a strike or kick of the ball made before it touches the ground.
Right.
So it cannot, by its very definition, have hit the ground. Forget about half volley for a minute. We're only talking about a volley. A volley cannot, at that point, it's a beautiful looking strike. If it's, as you said, reaches apex and you're nearly having to come at it from a side
before it touches the ground
point of view.
So say the ball bounces and then it just flicks off someone's knee and then you hit it. Just taps off someone's knee.
That's a volley.
Right. See, this is all fucking stupid,
isn't it?
That's
a volley. If it's come from a body part to you,
okay,
then it's a volley.
Dennis says, who interviewed Shane for OTB? Can't remember, but thanks for the support. It's led to probably more split
rancor
opinion,
I'd say
rancor than I expected. I'm just glad to have been enlightened. If I was wrong, I hold my hands up.
A lot of people saying that about you, Shane, that there's a lot of rancor going on with you.
Rancor.
Yeah.
Is that how you pronounce what they're saying? Rancor. I have to be careful with the pronunciation there, but yeah, fair enough. Look, if
people have an incorrect view like you have on it about what.
To be fair, Gilly Flaherty, I take Gilly's opinion.
That's the
she's a professional footballer, but I'm sure there are professional footballers who will say.
I'm sure there's not. One.
I don't know.
We're here for it. We're here for it. If anybody feels that.
Got people talking anyway. That's for sure.
Yeah. Right, you're take it away.
Yeah, so, sorry, we kind of discussed it at the top of the show, didn't we? The Formula 1 returns this weekend. Bahrain Grand Prix this Sunday afternoon. Jack Nicholls, BBC Formula 1 commentator, joins us on the line. Good morning, Jack. How are things?
Morning, all good, thank you.
Keeping well. Are you as excited about this season as the rest of us? I mean, Max Verstappen's win last year has led us to believe that he's on the way up. Lewis Hamilton, of course, still searching for that 8th world title. Is it going to be a procession for Max this year, or can you see a challenger?
I think it's difficult to know because it's the longest Formula 1 season in history, 23 races from now until the end of November. And although we've just had 3 days of pre-season testing here in Bahrain, and it looks like Red Bull are strong, you never know what's going to happen over the course of the year, because Ferrari started the season last year strongest and Red Bull went on to dominate. So I think that it is ominous looking for Verstappen, or for those who maybe don't want Verstappen to win. But I think they're going to be the strongest out the blocks. But we've got a long way to go.
They've made improvements to their car as well, Red Bull. This Honda engine, everyone knows, is very, very strong. Does that make it a little bit more ominous for opposing teams? Because you mentioned the testing. Red Bull have been oozing confidence in testing, it has to be said.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the other teams are sort of playing their chances down a little. But that is kind of how Red Bull roll, isn't it? You know, they're a very aggressive kind of brand and team, and they're always saying, yeah, we're the best. And Verstappen as well is not exactly a guy lacking in confidence, should we say. Whereas, you know, the Ferraris and the Mercedes of this world tend to be a little bit more, or, we'll see what happens. Can't read too much into testing. So I think that Red Bull have made improvements. Mercedes have made a good amount of improvement, but they were so far off last year that they've got so far to catch up, So even though they've done a good job and have closed the gap a little, we'll have to wait and see exactly how close they are.
Such a disappointing year for Mercedes and Hamilton in particular. Last season, Jack, 6th in the driver standings, further back than I'm sure even he would have expected. Some of the comments that I'm hearing from Toto Wolff in the last couple of weeks have been quite surprising. He said at the launch of their car, so we have to have a car capable of challenging for the championship eventually. And George Russell as well used the word eventually twice in one answer to the press conference. This word eventually, does it strike you as a bit of almost accepting that they're not quite at the level of Red Bull this year and they're looking even further down the line?
It's impossible to know what eventually means, isn't it? I think that's the thing. Like, maybe they mean halfway through the season is eventually. And in which case, if they can stay close to Red Bull for the first half of the year, then eventually they can start to mount a title challenge. But they may mean eventually means 2026 when there's a whole new load of rule changes. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens there, especially because, Hamilton is getting towards the end of his career and everyone's always like, oh, when's he going to retire? When's he going to retire? And he says he's not going to, and he's going to do a few more years. But as you say, 6th in the championship last year. I mean, I guess for Hamilton, if he's 6th or 3rd or 2nd, it kind of doesn't really make any difference, because he's here for the championships. And I don't think he'll be 6th in the standings this year. I think they'll be a little better than that, Mercedes. But will they be able to have him fight for a championship, which would be his 8th championship, which is kind of the record he's aiming for? No one's won 8 before. Hamilton and Schumacher are tied on 7. So it's very strange how, sort of downbeat, I suppose, Mercedes are. But maybe they're just trying to keep expectations in check.
Temper them a bit. Yeah, possibly. It could be a nice way to approach it. But Hamilton's been in the headlines as well in the off-season. We've had all this discussion around freedom of speech. Fairly controversial winter. The FIA president, Mohammed Ben Sulayem, fairly upset the drivers, it has to be said. Apparent ban on free speech. He said that he then backtracked and then taken a back seat from day-to-day running of F1. Lewis Hamilton came out and said, I'm going to continue to say exactly what I want. Has this been a distraction that Formula One didn't need in the off-season?
I think the lack of the sort of weird direction that the FIA president took in those various scenarios was very strange. I don't think it's really become too much of a distraction for the sport, really, because I think now, especially now that, as you say, Mohammed bin Sulayem has decided to step back from the sort of day-to-day running of Formula One, I think that'll quieten down a little bit. But it was all very odd, all of that stuff, especially because, I mean, Hamilton has been in not exactly hot water with the FIA over the last few years, but, he went and wore a T-shirt on the podium. I can't remember exactly where it was, but it said, arrest the cops that killed Breonna Taylor was, all his T-shirt said, and on the podium. And so that, talking about quite emotive subjects. And I think the FIA are always keen to suggest that sport and politics can be separated, not in a dissimilar way. Formula One races in Qatar and Saudi Arabia and here in Bahrain, countries that maybe don't necessarily have a great reputation throughout the world. But and we saw the FIA, well, they kind of behave in the way that FIFA do, right, with Qatar and the World Cup there, where it's, we're separating sport and politics, and Harry Kane can't wear the rainbow armband, and all those sorts of things is an attempt from the governing bodies to separate the location they're in and the political consequences of that from the drivers and the sport. Ultimately is kind of their goal.
Jack, do you watch Drive to Survive, or is it too lowbrow for somebody who's involved in the sport as you? I have to watch them because I do some of the commentary for it. So some of those shouting guys going, "Oh, Hamilton!" Blah, blah. That's me.
One of the stars of the show.
Okay, so
well, not quite.
Are they? Are you doing those in post, or are they? Am I asking too much here?
No, it's a mixture, honestly, because I do the commentary for the BBC, but Drive to Survive aren't then allowed to use the the rights of the BBC commentary, so I then have to go in and say exactly what I said before.
Okay.
So
rinse and repeat.
Is it tough to manufacture excitement, when it's already happened, I guess?
The thing is, I always think I've done an all right job, and then I watch them back and it's like, oh, that's terrible stuff. And
it's good to know we're all in the same boat on that one, Jack. That's
yeah, exactly. And the internet is full of being like, oh, this fake commentary is terrible. So yeah, it is tough to do, and I don't know why, because you say exactly the same thing in exactly the same tone, but you're just lacking a little bit of something. I don't know,
Yeah, it happens.
But a lot of the commentary in it is real from the Sky guys and stuff. So I just there to sort of fill in the gaps a little.
It happens more. We're revealing too much behind the curtain here, of course, but it happens more in this industry than I think people are aware of. Has it had a? So I watch Drive Survive religiously. We've been chatting about it earlier on. I love it. I don't really watch F1 races because they just don't fall at a good time for me. And there might be a follow-on question from that in a second. But has it had like a bleed of audience from Drive Survive to those interested in watching around it and watching races from what you can see?
Yeah, absolutely huge. The Drive to Survive impact, especially in America, has been massive. And I think, but there is a sort of I'm hearing sort of very anecdotal stories from people now where it's like if they've watched Drive to Survive, got into Formula One, they then don't watch Drive to Survive the next year because they know what happened. The first year they watched Drive to Survive, it was all a big, discovery, who's this, what's this. Then you get into the sport, watch it for a season. You don't need to watch the next season of Drive to Survive because you watched the last season, which is quite interesting. And apparently some of the drivers are being asked, when are you filming the next series of Drive to Survive? And they're like, well, no, it's a racing championship. Like, we race, that's real.
What we were chatting about it yesterday in advance of the show, just about that point that very much my experience, but I do find it hard to sit down and commit the time to watch it at the weekend with everything else going on. Is there any argument for moving it to a weekday or weeknight? Has that ever been discussed, or is that an absolutely ludicrous notion?
I don't think it is a ludicrous notion. It's never been seriously discussed from what I can tell. NASCAR in America, I think, do some weeknight races. They do it quite a lot, actually. And there was, but only because of COVID, but a championship called Formula E, an electric racing championship, did a few sort of evening races. But it's an interesting theory. I think that I don't know. Yeah, I don't really know what to say about that, because it's a really interesting thought. And when you look at how, as you say, congested like sports weekend schedules are. I mean, we have it right because my commentary goes on 5 Live, but there's always a 2:00 Premier League kickoff or a 4:00 Premier League kickoff. So most of the time, until you get into the proper summer, we're on 5 Sports Extra or the BBC website or whatever, because football obviously takes priority for a lot of people. So it's an interesting thought, and one I've not really thought of before. It's a good job.
Yeah, Jack. One of the teams in testing that have really excited a lot of people have been Aston Martin. I, like many others, am a big fan of Fernando Alonso, and that decision to leave Alpine last year. Everyone was thinking, well, what's he doing? But turns out, I mean, if you look at the Aston Martin car in testing, it's a beast. And I guess the question is, can it challenge Mercedes? Like, is this a car that they could be pushing for second in the Constructors' Championship, or am I getting ahead of myself?
I think everybody, from what it looked like in testing, maybe. It looked as though Red Bull and Ferrari are probably the 2 front runners, but then maybe Aston Martin are a third quickest. But I think everybody's a little reluctant to really commit to that for the same reason that you are, because it's a team that were the Jordan team and then Force India, and they've had a load of investment from billionaire team owner Lawrence Stroll, and they're making the investment and they're trying to push towards the front, but they're still, it feels like they should still be quite a few years away from that. But I think everybody wants them to get towards the front, and then Fernando Alonso back at the front would be a great story. So I think almost everybody in the paddock would really like that to be a case, with Alonso on the podium and fighting for wins for Aston Martin. I mean, that's a really cool story, but everyone's just a little bit, there must be something that doesn't add up, because Fernando Alonso spent his whole career making the wrong decisions of which team to join. And Aston Martin have spent their whole time sort of in the midfield. So to think that Aston Martin are going to be at the front with Alonso, who's made the correct career decision for once, it's too good to be true, almost, So I think there's a little bit of scepticism about it still.
And he hasn't won a race, I think, since 2013. So that'll be something that'll be nice to see this season for sure. You mentioned Ferrari there, and Steph and Adrian were talking about it earlier. They've replaced their team principal, of course. Matteo Binotto is out. Fred Vasseur is in. Loads of race strategy errors, unforced race strategy errors last season that kind of overshadowed Ferrari's campaign. How do you think they can fare this year? Have they possibly stamped out all of those mistakes, do you reckon?
Well, I think it'll take a bit of time, but Fred Vasseur, as you say, has come in from the Alfa Romeo team. He's the first outside hire for a Ferrari team principal for 30 years. The last one was Jean Todt in 1993. Ever since then, Ferrari have promoted from within, and you kind of get the feeling that just perpetuates or continues the culture within the team. And so Fred Vasseur has come in and he's instantly moved the head of strategy back to Maranello. So he's not coming to the track anymore. That'll be a sort of change in the strategy plan, which was, as you say, incredibly needed after last season. So it looks as though they're taking the right steps, at least. And they are, for all of the negativity around last season, it was the most competitive they've been for a long time. So they are moving in the general right direction. And I think Vasseur is a really interesting appointment. He's a no-nonsense Frenchman. Again, the first Frenchman, or the first non-Italian to be in charge of that team since Jean Todt, when he left in 2006 or 7, I think it was 2006. So things are changing at Ferrari, and I think that can only be a good thing, and I think they realised it's an absolutely necessary thing.
Finally, Jack, just to get your prediction, this is always the awkward and tough part, predictions for the season in terms of Constructors' Championship, Drivers' Championship, and maybe the rookie that's going to stand out as well. I'm looking at so we've got Logan Sargent in at Williams, the first American driver in almost 10 years in Formula 1. Nick De Vries is in with AlphaTauri, and Oscar Piastri with McLaren. So who's your pick for Constructors' Championship, Drivers' Championship, and maybe Rookie of the Year?
I mean, I like every part of me wants to not say Max Verstappen and Red Bull for the teams and the drivers. I think that, but I couldn't pick who would beat them. You know what I mean? Like, it could be Ferrari. I think they could have a shot if Mercedes can get on top of their car. In the first quarter of the year, maybe they could have a shot. But I'd be too scared to pick one of those over Verstappen, and as for the rookie, I think Oscar Piastri is a driver that everybody's really excited about. He's won everything he's raced in on his way up the junior formula. Up against Lando Norris at McLaren is going to be a really, really tough ask for him. That's a bit of a baptism of fire, but we see it with the best. When Lewis Hamilton came in 2007 and immediately matched Fernando Alonso, that's when you know that these kids have got it. So I'm excited to see what the Australian Oscar Piastri can do at McLaren.
And we look forward to following your coverage and listen to you on Drive to Survive. Jack Nicholls of the BBC, thanks a million.
No worries, thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot, really good stuff there. This Volley Talk episode says, Bo sang David on YouTube. This Volley Talk episode is like the Fly episode of Breaking Bad. It'll become a cult classic.
It's fair, and I actually really enjoyed the Fly episode of Breaking Bad. I know a lot of people hated it. It was studied in college.
Made because they ran out of budget.
Yeah, but it was thematically very interesting.
It was brilliant.
Yeah. It meant a lot of things.
Absolute. People say cult classic in some sort of a negative tones.
Yeah. No, Cocaine Bear is a cult classic for all the wrong reasons.
Right.
But Breaking Bad, the Fly episode, for all the right reasons, as far as I'm concerned. So sorry, Danny Mack said Parchy song, Dennis Bergkamp. Now volleys. Say what you want about young Hannon. It ain't boring. The Dennis Bergkamp one was not me. It was Colm. Colm yesterday was comparing Wout Weghorst to Dennis Bergkamp. Stop. That was not me. So I'm gonna. But the Parchy song one, world class player.
Should
be
some sort of a delay.
As is leaky.
You know the way Talk to Joe has like a dump button.
Yeah.
Takes like that one.
Just to turn off a microphone.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
Righto, Friday Firepit is up next. I don't know what's going to be on the menu for that, but we shall find out imminently. Cameron and Kathleen standing by. First of all, Stephen Kenny's thoughts on Evan Ferguson's extraordinary breakthrough. He's been talking to our own Nathan.
He's already played Liverpool twice and beat Liverpool twice and played a lot of games, and he's had a remarkable start really to his career and done very well.
Because you can claim to be something of a Nostradamus with this, because I think when he made those couple of appearances back in November, you made some comments of, people were questioning he wasn't playing for Brighton at the time. Why is he getting the international call up? And you had a feeling that by the time these games would come around, that he would be in a position to have played enough football. You didn't think it was going to be with Brighton, though?
I wasn't sure. But so far in the early stages of his career, he's made everything look quite easy. He keeps things simple. He protects the ball really well. He shields the ball well. He takes the ball in, makes simple decisions, good decisions in possession. And
it's hard to
he's mobile.
Remember that he's only 18.
He's mobile, and his movement in the box is very good. His natural striker's instincts, and of course he scores headed finishes, which fewer strikers nowadays are scoring headed goals. We've seen that in the under-21s against Israel in the first playoff. Brilliant headed goal, and he has the ability to score headed goals, which is great off crosses to be able to do that.
What is it called? Friday Firepit? Firepit Fridays?
So we just put a bit more thought into dominating
miserable
comments box this morning. You gotta call it like it is.
It's Friday, like come on.
The Friday Firepit.
Good morning. Welcome back to the show. Kathleen, Cameron, good morning to you.
Morning, guys.
Adrian, how are you?
I'm okay. Who's taking control of this thing?
I'm glad it's the Friday. Usually we've been getting a lot of hate in the comments on the Friday Firepit because the crappy quiz hasn't been on, so everyone's like, where's the bloody quiz? But the crappy quiz, I'm told, is on today. So instead of leaving those negative comments,
folks.
Just tell us in the comments how much you love the Firepit, because we've got the quiz today.
That'll be great. Well, because we have Noz Choudry's list, so it's like a Friday match today rather than a Firepit. We have to go through this quickly. We'll start with the volley thing, because I think that's caught people's attention.
We definitely haven't talked enough about it.
I think
I'm glad you
we literally have a former international footballer who has solved the whole thing, and we're still like,
I think Ashley Garani is responsible.
Still though,
let's not call it a debate.
My one thing about this though has been so like, whether it's a volley or not, I also don't think you can call it a strike, because to me a strike could mean anything. There's like no definition to that at all.
But it has to call.
What do you call it? Kick.
Something.
Well, effort is always.
I don't mind calling it anything as long
wide.
as it's not called a volley. Incorrect,
Lads, I don't know. It's fired people up. I just don't know. I don't know how Wayne Rooney's strike from halfway line, where the ball is at an apex and it's in the air for ages, and then he hits it, is not. It's not a bloody half volley anyway.
We can move on from this very quickly. If either of you, have you any? Do you want to endorse Shane's thoughts?
Oh no, I'm letting him fall on that sword, unless Kathleen wants to.
I kind of see Shane's point. I do get the point of if it bounces. But I also think if someone's in the air and they're striking a ball like that, to me that's like a volley is the only thing that actually does it justice, because if you just call it a strike, then it's, I don't know, it doesn't describe what's actually happening.
A beautiful strike, could we, like, with that?
Let's go with
that.
But
and aesthetically.
But that still doesn't describe what you're actually seeing, whereas when you say the word volley, you know exactly what someone means, and you see that kind of, they're mid-air, they're almost like this.
Zidane against Leverkusen or Rooney against Man City. That's an unmistakable volley.
When you misdescribe it as a volley, you give the best picture of it, Kathleen, is what you're saying.
Well, I don't know. Like, I have never really felt all that strongly about this point until this morning. But I also think it's the best word to describe what you're seeing in front of you. Like, if I just said, I watched a strike, that could literally mean anything. Whereas if I say he volleyed the ball, you're not necessarily thinking, did it bounce beforehand? Did it not bounce beforehand? You have that automatic image in your head of someone like on the edge, leaning over, beautiful leg out. You see the photos already like in your head on the front pages. You know what it means. So I'm not saying technically Shane is wrong or right. I'm just saying that
definitely wrong.
I know what he was getting at.
If somebody said, "Oh, go and watch that volley," as you describe it, and then I was to see that, I'd be like, "Well, why?" That was misdescribed.
Yeah, but also it's not a half volley. Bloody hell.
What have we anything else?
We do actually.
We have to commit to this for the next 20 minutes or something else.
We do. It was something that came up actually yesterday with Gavin Houlihan's goal for Grimsby, which sent Southampton crashing out of the FA Cup. That one of our colleagues here at News Talk went to school with Gavin, and it got me thinking about like. Everybody in every school had like the best athlete in their class or in their year or whatever, and I always wonder what happened to them, like, because we've all experienced that, and unfortunately I can only speak for myself here, but I certainly wasn't the best athlete. But I'm always curious to find out what happens to, do they go on to have an excellent career? Do they give up afterwards? I just think.
Who were you in school with?
I was in school with.
I mean, I'm not looking for the full class list here.
Well, yeah, from A to Z. Like the person I'm thinking of at the moment, there's a few different people. Sarah McGill, who was an underage Irish football star, she was a couple of years ahead of me. A couple of years below me, Hubert Gilvary, who was in the Connacht Academy, played a few times for Connacht, is now doing his thing with the Ireland Sevens, and I mean, hopefully he can go on to have the same kind of career that Hugo Keenan had from that launch pad. But you were saying you have a few interesting people you went to school with who...
Yeah. It wasn't like, these aren't like, actually some of them are sort of whatever became of them, but there was like a lot of, it was a big GA school at that time. Rory O'Connell would have been a couple of years ahead of me. Fergal Murray would have been around the same year. Joe Fallon, Tom Trainer. There was a lot of players who went on to play for Westmeath and then Roscommon as well, because it was on the border there.
Yeah.
But there was also, you gave us like a sort of a breadth of about 11 years, I think. Did you sort of a...
Kind of. Like, what do you count as being in school with someone? Because I went to primary school with Matty Ruan, and he was my next door neighbour.
That's legit.
Yeah, you'd take that? Yeah. Okay, cool. There you go.
We had two lads go over to play professional football. Ray Kelly was one, and I'd sort of forget, you know the way you kind of forget about things, and then it was like listen to the Roddy Collins book, and I was just reminded that he went back to Bohemians. He'd gone over and played for Man City. I think Mick McCarthy might have been, no, maybe did Mick McCarthy manage Man City for a while?
He played for Man City, didn't he?
Maybe it was around the end of his days there. I'd have to Wikipedia that one. But actually, no, I might be conflating these stories. There was another one then, Mickey Collins went over to play for Millwall, who was Mick McCarthy manager of Millwall at that time.
So Mick played for Man City and played for Millwall. He also managed Millwall.
Oh, well, might have it was Mickey Collins at Millwall then, and I think he came back and played League of Ireland for a few years. But Robbie Henshaw is the one. Now that's where I'm testing the 11 years thing. Probably. I
was going to say you weren't in the same year as Robbie anyway.
No, not the same year. No chance.
No. Were you in the school at the same time?
Don't think so.
Not a chance.
No, we wouldn't have been. No, because
he'd have that question, Cameron.
No. He'd have been 6 or 7 years younger than me, and unfortunately,
I just missed the boat. Yeah.
My colleagues here are guffawing at me.
Robbie Henshaw wasn't even like Adrian was doing the leaving cert, and Robbie Henshaw wasn't even a thought.
That's very unfair. I think that's very unfair, Shane. Anyone?
Fine, yeah.
I don't know if St. McCartan's College at the Sem where I went in Monaghan, the secondary school it's a very Gaelic football heavy school.
Okay.
We play a lot of sport, like there's soccer and plenty of other sports in it as well, but it is like if you play Gaelic football you're laughing. So a lot of mine would be like, I was in a lot of lads who went on to play county football for Monaghan would have been in my class, but there's no I was looking for a real sexy answer like Tommy Bowe or Barry McGuigan was in my school. I can't say that, so there's no one who really obviously playing for your county is a great achievement, but no one who I can say, that's unbelievable.
College in Athlone, by the way, that was I never mentioned that.
Yeah. No.
You know, like there's people out there living in Brazil right now who went to school with Pele. Do you know that kind of thing, or people who are in Muhammad Ali's class in Louisville. Like that is impressive. Imagine being able to say that. Oh, Muhammad Ali sat beside me there in school.
Well, you know how people make like nuanced comments about he'll do something now, that fella.
Yeah.
He'll go on. There's something
Mouthy,
something about him.
Yeah.
Never shuts up, that guy.
Kathleen.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same as Shane. Like a lot of people in my school went on to do impressive things, but it wasn't necessarily really in a sporting context. I also feel like it's slightly different as well when you go to an all-girls school, like because obviously there aren't the same opportunities to go on and maybe have like a stellar career, or like they're definitely a lot more limited. So I know, so our school they encouraged the people who were very good at sport, but the rest of us weren't necessarily encouraged to play it all that much. So yeah, I don't really know if I have anything very good to add to that particular topic.
Where did Mona McCharry go?
She was, because she was Ross's Point, isn't she? I think she went to one of the schools out that way. I don't think she went into town. I could be wrong on that. Also, a great Sligo person, obviously.
Yeah, of course.
Sligo's heap of famous people, like. Do you know, if WB Yates was in your class, that'd be great. Like,
I tell you, he can write.
It'd be a slight worry if he was in my class in the Ursuline, but
stretching the 11-year theory there.
Imagine being in English class with WB Yates. And you're like, anyone want to pick up this?
If you were the teacher, you'd just be sitting back going, WB.
Yeah. WB.
Do you reckon that was his nickname at school?
I would say so, yeah.
WB.
I would say so.
Warner Brothers.
I'd say when he got in trouble, it was William Butler. I'd say that was
come in here for your dinner.
Yates. Yeah.
Mona actually went to school in Ballyshannon. Didn't even go to school in Sligo. I was thinking that. I was like, I never remember.
So she's an Donegal woman, really? You're only claiming her?
No. It was like there's a part of the Bundoran Road. If you live there, you kind of either go towards Donegal for school, or you go towards Sligo, but you still live in Sligo.
I was at the United game against Barcelona. I don't know if I've mentioned that yet in Stretford End, and I was very conscious not to bring my phone out. I had my phone out maybe to take a little video before the game or after the game, but during the 90 minutes of the match itself, I was like, nah, not a chance. I'm not going to enjoy this. I know, Cameron, you've brought this topic up as a potential Firepit option as well.
I'm surprised you brought it up because you were disproved the last time you were on saying I would never do that.
The question is,
I'm not a crook.
The question is, what's the best way to watch
Shane
sport?
Nixon.
My answer is in person with your eyes, not your bloody phone. But
as opposed to filming Crow Park.
Well, Cameron has an interesting enough take on this one.
Yeah, like what's the best way to watch sport apart from live? Because I heard obviously live is another world, but. I was listening to a podcast the other day and someone said my favourite way to watch sport, and I completely agree with this, is in a Curry's when your mum's off shopping and you have 19 TVs to choose from and they're all really high quality. That was my favourite way to watch 20 minutes of a game.
Would you?
You would. Yeah, because they'd be showing off the speakers, wouldn't they?
True, I suppose, yeah.
Possibly a controversial take. You say like the best way to watch sport is live. The best way to experience sport is live, but is it the best way to watch it?
Oh no, I think it definitely is. I have a really
because like you can't when you're there and you're in the moment, you're watching the game, you're getting into it, you have like the crowd, but you're not. You have to almost go back and watch it again to actually get any sort of like analysis or thought process to it. So like, yes, experiencing a game live when there's an amazing atmosphere is unreal, but like watching a game and properly seeing what's happening.
No, I think live. Right. I think live is the best, and it's a controversial topic among my friend group, but I think behind the goals is the best seat in the house.
I think that's true on an occasional basis, but not.
Depends on the game in the stadium, really.
The sport, like.
Yeah.
It does depend. If you're up high in with the gods, I think that's the best place to watch, because you can see how I've watched Ireland games
rugby
from behind, and you can see how the play is developing and the movement of the players.
Then you lose at a certain point. I was sat behind the Havelock square end goal for the Ireland New Zealand game, and it's an amazing view for some of the stuff that's going on in front of you. But once it goes outside that 22 that's in front of you, you're just on the TV.
Depends on the sport. Formula One, I think, would attest to what Kathleen is saying there, as in Formula One TV coverage is unbelievable. It's unparalleled. Like, you've got the radio, you're hearing what team principals are saying to drivers, you're hearing what team principals are arguing with FIA, race directors, and then just the coverage of all.
Can you get a little earpiece for that?
I don't know. But you see, that's the thing. Like in football, if you're watching a race in person, you're really only seeing cars go past very fast.
Yeah,
you're hearing some commentary as well, but it's not quite
Monaco
the same.
would be the best, I'd say, would it?
Yeah,
because
you're having your glass of vino and chilling out.
Cheese, yeah.
But I think certain sports lend themselves more to just TV viewing. Now, I was at the snooker last week in Wolverhampton, and snooker, believe it or not, is a brilliant in-person sport. Like, you go out between sessions, you're sitting there for 4 frames trying to be really quiet, but like the atmosphere is like you could hear a pin drop, and then when an unbelievable shot goes in, the place erupts. So I think it's one of those.
Kathleen, what's tennis like live? I know you've been to Wimbledon. Is it much better?
I feel like Wimbledon is like a weird example for tennis. Like, I don't know if this is what all of them are like, because there's so much pageantry and there's so much pomp to it. Like, I just remember sitting on centre court watching Ash Barty play, and it was like one of the first ones I had gone to at Wimbledon, and like every time there's a break in play, you just hear pop, 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 pop around, because everyone's popping their bottles of champagne. Like, you're allowed to bring whatever you want in glass, it doesn't really matter. And then the game will start up again and it's like completely silent, and all you can hear is like the players talking to themselves or like shouting out to their coaches. And then again, play stops and you just hear pop, 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 pop. I don't know if it's necessarily better live. I think it's very dependent on who's playing. And like when Andy Murray was playing, the crowd was absolutely electric, and there was like this ripple of anticipation even when it was completely silent. But whenever, say, there was like someone that maybe wasn't as well known or wasn't a fan favourite with the crowd, it was a very different atmosphere. And I kind of like with tennis, because sometimes there's like quite a lot of breaks in play. It's nice having that commentary to listen into and kind of like actual experts talking about what has just happened or telling stories. Like a lot of the time you get former tennis players on. So yeah, it's definitely something that I'm glad I experienced, and I would definitely go back again, but I don't know if it would be one of my like top sports to watch live.
I've been shouted at here that we have to wrap up.
I would say
it's too curtailed. We need more room for it. We need to get on to the producer, who's now unhappy because he's had a curtailed item. But that notwithstanding, Cameron, thank you very much. Kathleen,
thank you.
Thanks a lot. That's the Firepit.
What is it called? Friday Firepit? Firepit Fridays.
So we just put a bit more thought into dominating comments box this morning. You gotta call it like it is.
Friday, like come on. The Friday Firepit.
Right, it's nearly 9:10. You're watching OTB AM, and we are, of course, brought to you with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night edition available now. And here's some highlights that are coming up on the OTB Podcast Network over the course of the day. We'll have Stephen Kenny, Declan Bogue, really interesting chat with Nathan last night. The Rugby Daily will be up there as well. You can follow OTB across social and subscribe in the OTB Podcast Network during the ads. In the final episode of the OTB Games Room, Nathan is going to face off against a professional FIFA player, Kieran Walsh, known as Mr. Welly from Team Wild, and you can take a look at that here.
You're listening
to OTB AM. The Koi Gig Pod.
I wouldn't even look at them. I wouldn't even prepare to play against them, because you don't know what you're going to get. We could beat them 6-0. Or we could lose 6-0.
Pre-season, I haven't been broken by it yet, so ask away. Shamrock Rovers, even though they're a new club, based on pre-season, you'd be looking at them.
Keep up to date with all the WSL action every Tuesday and subscribe to the feed in the OTB Sports app now.
A little step over from me there. I'll show you that trick if you want.
Cheers.
Oh, look at that. Ah! Oh, God damn it.
That's a sickener. Good game.
I thought it'd be 10-0 to be honest.
Oh yeah, well I mean if we had more time I think we would have got to 10.
If the game was longer. Zidane let me down.
Nah, I don't know. Schmeichel kept you in it. Schmeichel kept it from being a real embarrassment.
So how far away do you feel I am from going pro?
Listen, right now you're a bit away, but like, I mean, you know, anyone could do it with the right work. So
when I'm telling the kids to get off FIFA after like 2 hours of playing, I should be giving them another 4 hours.
Yeah.
So they either take it seriously or they get off it.
Yeah, if they're taking it seriously, they're allowed on it. Yeah, okay. In my book, yeah.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night edition available now.
It's so unexpected. It's one of those you had to be there moments.
You had to be there.
It subsequently genuinely did change everything about my life.
You had to be there.
All right, in the ads there you saw Mr. Welly up against Nathan, and we'll see who ends up at the top of the leaderboard after all of that. And it was all as part of the OTB Games Room in partnership with Virgin Media. You can bring your A game with 99.9% broadband reliability. Now, as you've heard from the Sting there, it is time for You Had to Be There. I'm delighted to say it's a very special episode today. Ronan Choudry, who's a football writer, Manchester expert, and Noz is what it says in front of me here, and an interesting things beyond the whitewash as well. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on. Manchester expert, that's a good one. Does that mean that I know all about the Gallaghers and everything?
Got the keys to Manchester, yeah, the Stone Roses, everything.
Lowry was Manchester, wasn't he? Am I wrong about that? Right, we've got a very, I don't know, can I say eclectic mix of stuff here, even though it all is hooked generally around one sport.
Yeah.
You're going to kick us off, take us back to 1994, an unusual starting spot.
Yeah, so it was basically... it was a charity game it was a charity cricket game, and it was Manchester United versus, I think they were called the Cheetham Hill Celebrity 11, which was basically just the odd Coronation Street actor, and it was just mad having all these heroes at my local cricket club, and it kind of points to the era as well, because you wouldn't get that now. It was just. What it was it's a very small cricket club, and they have like a small pavilion, and we could just mingle with the players, who were getting more and more merry as the day went on, because it was kind of like a charity thing, so they were allowed to drink. Ferguson allowed them to drink that day. So yeah, you had people like Brian Robson, Mark Hughes, Clayton Blackmore. You also had City players, all the greats like Fitzroy Simpson, Paul Walsh, Peter Beagra, so legends on both sides. But it was just it was an amazing experience, and especially at that age, it was like, what are these people doing here? It was like It's like a weird dream.
Was there like a huge crowd at it, or was it a hugely publicised thing that like thousands turned up for, or no?
No, it was so weird. There must have been like maybe 100 of us there, so it was quite intimate. And I don't know how we found out about it, but we ended up going down, and it was funny because I was quite shy to sort of ask for something, because everyone was asking for autographs, and they were obliging. They were being dead nice. I mean, in fact, like one of the nicest people there was David Rocastle. He was lovely. But I was quite shy to ask for autographs, and then I saw like a kindly old Asian guy, and like I used the old uncle card. Whenever you see sort of a brown man of a certain age, went uncle. And then he sort of turned around and said, can you get us some autographs? Because he was with the players sort of in the pavilion. So he was dead nice, and like he took my program off me and basically got a load of signatures. And I thought, like, what a nice man. And then like later on I found out he was actually a really famous Indian cricketer called Farooq Engineer, who'd played like 46 tests. So
and he's looking at you going, kid, what? I mean, I know, I get the play here, but come on.
Yeah, also, but that's the thing. That's the thing about uncles. I mean, I'm sure it's the same in Ireland. It's probably it's like how Irish people feel about that Matt LeBlanc meme, sort of like his universal uncle.
Yeah. The arms crossed and all the rest. Yeah. It's funny. It's like that time someone at the airport, was it Higuain and Messi? Someone asked Messi to take their phone and take a photograph of them with one of Messi's teammates, or maybe it was Suarez, maybe. But it's one of those. Noz, were any of the footballers really, really good at cricket? Like famously, and probably a couple of years after, but Phil Neville was a top level cricketer.
He was famously good. Lee Sharp was good, and I think Paul Walsh was good as well. Paul Walsh was going through his proper sort of like Hollywood star in his own head, like with the blonde flowing locks. So yeah, he was loving it. But no, it was good. But I'll be honest, I wasn't really interested in the cricket. I was just staring at all the players, thinking, "What are you doing here?"
Do you still have the autographs?
Yeah, I've got it somewhere. I'll have to dig it out. But yeah, I've still got the program. There's like one or two autographs that I think, I'm not sure who that is, but yeah, the rest of them. It could have. I was so giddy that day. I could have like been going to the groundsman and sort of saying, "Can I have your autograph as well?" I mean, considering I couldn't identify a world famous cricketer, I was just going around asking for everyone's autograph.
Did you get any of the Coronation Street stars? Was that just like who are these old people?
I didn't. Well, I don't really. I know it's sacrilege for a Mancunian, but I don't really watch Coronation Street.
No, come on.
Yeah, so I think I got a couple, but I think there was somebody Middlemiss and somebody Lavelle. But,
did he play Kevin Webster? I mean, I don't know why I know this information.
Oh yeah.
That's the one. Yeah.
I thought that was a rite of passage. To be from Manchester, you had to watch Corrie.
Well, the funny thing is that like my first job after university was working at Granada Studios, just in a like finance job. And like I once got told off for trespassing onto the cobbles.
And you're these are my mates. I know all these guys. We hang out. We play cricket. Yeah. That was Robson. Had he finished at United at that point, Noz, or was he still?
In
'94, he was. Yeah.
Yeah, he might have just left. Yeah, I think, and again, the funny thing with Ferguson is that everyone thinks of him as being like dead, sort of authoritarian and sort of like saying to players, "You can't drink, you can't go out." The one exception was like charity things. Like if ever there was a situation like that, like he'd let them sort of like let their hair down, and Brian Robson, as we well know, did let his hair down when a drink was available.
I suspect they might have organised a lot of charity things.
Exactly.
Take us forward 6 years. You want to talk about United 3, Fiorentina 1, and one Argentinian specifically.
Yeah, that's the thing, because growing up, especially with the when Channel 4 got the rights to Italian football, it was so glamorous, and I completely fell in love with Italian football and all these incredible stars, but the thing is that they felt so otherworldly. Like English football was great, and we had our own sort of stars, and that was a stage where a lot of great players would come to this country from abroad, like Klinsmann and Ruud Gullit and all sorts. But there was something about Italian football that just seemed like it was from another planet. It just seemed more glamorous. All the goals seemed better. which is funny, really, because like I think I enjoyed the Gazetta football roundup on a Saturday morning more than I did the actual matches on a Sunday. Because when you actually watched a match all the way through, you realised it was far slower. There was fewer goals, but that didn't sort of stop me from sort of idolising half the players. But the biggest stars for me were always Baggio and Batistuta, and Batistuta in particular. The way he played, he felt like a superhero. Like he looked like a superhero, and the power he got into his shots, and like the way he played as a centre forward was unreal. So when there was a chance to watch him at Old Trafford, I was buzzing. We'd lost when we'd gone to Fiorentina earlier in the season. So when they came to Old Trafford, there was a little bit of nervousness. But the thing is, we won 3-1, and all of United's goals were actually really, really good. Andy Cole scored from outside the area. Dwight York scored from a really good header from a really good cross, and Roy Keane probably scored the best goal of the game technically, because it was one of those that I think somebody took a shot. It might have come off the
Henning Berg had taken a shot back off the crossbar.
And then he it was a really hard volley because it came straight at him, and Roy Keane had to sort of volley it first, and you could tell it was a volley because it didn't touch the floor. So it was really, really good. But
I was like, is he what?
See what you did there.
We're on the same wavelength, Noz. Yeah, that's well observed.
Can you see my point? No, it's
apropos of nothing, obviously.
But the thing is, in spite of how good United's goals were, and obviously I was so chuffed that we'd won. The one thing that made it memorable was seeing Batistuta play, and he scored the first goal, and it was the classic Batistuta goal where he got the ball maybe 30 yards out, didn't look like there was any issue. United didn't even do anything wrong in terms of defending. Like the positioning, everything was fine. Those players sort of like closing him down, but he only needed like half a yard, and he just let fly. And in terms of like an opposition goal, like that's probably the best I've seen at Old Trafford, and the power he got into it. And again, it's this thing like I heard briefly a conversation about how it's best to experience sport earlier, and the thing with that goal is that you'll watch it back on YouTube or whatever, and it looks like an amazing goal, but I don't think you realise how good it was unless you were there. The power he got in it, and also when you watch it on TV or you watch it on YouTube, you'll notice that the ball kind of hits the goal, like the net in the centre. So you kind of think, well, surely Bosnich should have saved that, but if you were there, you'd realise like it was past him before he knew it, and it sort of had that swaz, so it was just unstoppable.
That was the thing. I remember watching that game as a kid on TV, and I was a United fan, but buying a Batistuta Fiorentina jersey after. It was just the long hair, the hairband, and then it was the noise on TV when the ball hit the net. Like you almost feared for Bosnich's safety. It was hit with that much power. But did it make a noise? It almost made the perfect noise when it hits the net. This is like a real niche football thing.
Yeah.
But you know that perfect sound when it hits the net. It just seemed like one of those unbelievable strikes, Noz.
It wasn't, and it's that rasp as well of the net, but it doesn't happen very often. But you occasionally get the kind of, because the thing is, most goals, the fans are anticipating it, so there's almost a build-up of excitement, and then it happens, and there's a crescendo of noise. Very occasionally, what happens is there's a goal that's not expected, so there's not that build-up of noise, and it happens, and there's almost like a half a second of silence where people are computing, did that just happen? And it kind of felt like that, where he scored, and then it was like, how did he do that? Like, and it kind of sort of built up that sort of idea that he was otherworldly. And the annoying thing is that I don't know what it's like. I don't know what it was like in Ireland, but growing up, teletext was a big thing, and especially on ITV, they had this thing where it would be like one page of two, and the second page would always be adverts of like these numbers you could call for like transfer gossip, and it was all rubbish. but every so often there'd be one in like a particular colour and it'd be flashing, so as if it's like breaking news or it's going to happen. And the amount of times United were linked to Batistuta on those on those calls, and like mugs like me getting giddy and sort of thinking, like, could I get away with ringing it without sort of making the phone bill astronomical? But yeah, I would have loved him at United.
CFAX, that teletext, like I still remember the numbers on the BBC. Like going on to 323 for news and brief, 338 for newspaper gossip, 301 for the sport, 303 for the football. Right, I just remembered them all off.
And you'd be waiting for the pages to flip as well, because you'd have results. If there was enough games on, you'd have results in 2 pages, and you'd be like waiting for the results to see come up.
Exactly.
I mean, imagine consuming sport in that such a one-dimensional way is incredible.
And then sometimes the sort of games would be 2 pages. And then if it sort of suddenly flipped to 3 pages, you thought, there's been a goal because like they've had to use a 3rd page.
That's right, yeah. I don't know. I'll have to wait a half an hour for it to flick back to page 1.
The Irish one on the RTE one, I think you had the Premier League scores had a specific page, 220, I think it was, or 222, and then the Irish, if there was an Irish goal scorer, you'd have that name in green.
That's right.
It's brilliant.
Oh, wow.
You're mad looking for all these green goal scorers. Robbie Keane.
We're not obsessed with ourselves or anything.
Brilliant.
Right, flip us on. We're going forward a few more years now. We're up to 2013 and Fergie's final game at Old Trafford.
Yeah, and it was the thing is that obviously it was the end of an era, but like it's almost a case of you don't realise it at the time, and then it's only afterwards that you realise how monumental it was. Because and again, like this is almost sacrilege, but because Ferguson had been there so long, there was almost a sense of like it was quite exciting for there to be a new era. And like we didn't know how the new era was going to turn out, and how sort of barren it was going to be, and how much of a mess it was going to be. But when you've had a manager for that long, it's the whole sort of process of getting a new manager and scouring the whole world for the most world class option and finding David Moyes. It's kind of quite exciting, and like even David Moyes, like it was a point at which football still felt quite local. And the idea of getting David Moyes in, who was like quite a local manager and had that sort of Scottish thing going on, and like there's that aura of like Scottish managers, especially at that time. Like you had like Shankly, you had Busby, and like basically all these managers that had grown that had lived in the same area, and there was things like David Moyes' granddad something new, Ferguson or something like that. So there was all that background, and it was stuff, and there was all like little flags and stuff to like make a mosaic, and I always find that massively cringe. And it was at the it's funnily enough, it was at Wembley with the League Cup final a week or so ago with like the flags and scarves, and I always find that cringe because it always feels like manufactured atmosphere. But the funny thing with that game is I took my nephew, and it was my nephew's first ever game.
Wow!
And for that to be for Ferguson's last game to be my nephew's first game, it sort of amplified it, and it made it bigger for me because he was so excited. He was so excited to get his flag, and he was, and I think we all bemoan half and half scarves and kind of think like, who buys those? It's kids. Kids buy it because they want to wear it the next day and prove that they went to the game, and like it gives you a different perspective on so many things if you go with a kid, and it sort of renews your excitement for it. And the actual credit to United, they sort of organised it really well, and the game was kind of it was fitting because it was 1-1, and then Rio Ferdinand scored a late goal, which was always the Fergie way, and it was like an incredible sort of like goal scorer's finish as well, considering he'd not scored for years.
You mentioned about sorry, Noz, you mentioned about people like not been unaware of what was to come, right? Like, the Byrne years, and like the Moyes thing just made sense. I mean, Fergie had handpicked him and all this sort of, but I watched back after the on the pitch speech last night, and like it gets remembered for the "your job new" bit, but actually like looking back to it, and maybe there's a bit of hindsight here, but he references his own shaky start, and there's like an uproarious sort of response from the crowd, obviously, about David Moyes and your job knew, okay, this, everybody understood that, and we will stick by David Moyes. And it wasn't long before, like, the knives were out. It almost felt as if Ferguson himself had an awareness of this is not, this group are an ageing group, and this is not going to go. Moyes may have to go through what I went through.
Oh, completely. And the thing is that, like, even at the time, it kind of felt as though, like, how is Fergie winning the league with this team? And again, like so much of it was finding a way. Ferguson always found a way. I always say that Ferguson's greatest attribute was pragmatism. He wasn't I don't think he was a purist. It wasn't always about playing the beautiful game or sort of sticking to your principles. He didn't even treat all the players the same. He was extremely strict on players like Lee Sharp and Ryan Giggs and the younger homegrown players. But then he understood that Cantona needed to be treated differently and things like that. So even with that team, he bought in Van Persie because he knew that Van Persie was this amazing temporary sticking plaster. So it was going to be difficult whoever came in. Yeah. But also, we can't romanticize the past and act as if, like, the sort of modern fan is any different from previous generations in terms of giving managers time, because I think part of what Ferguson was saying there in terms of, like, your job is to trust the new manager, is because not only did he know that it's going to be a difficult job, but he remembers when he was getting grief. Like for the first, like up until that 1990 FA Cup final win, the fans wanted him out. Like, and if you look at, like, the fanzines at that time, he's getting lots of criticism, and a lot of it was sort of fair enough in terms of the money he'd spent and the time he'd had. And there's a famous sign to Ra Fergie that somebody put together. So things don't really change that much, and fans have always been as fickle or not fickle as they've always been. But yeah, it was an emotional day, and the fact that I got to share it with my nephew, and he can now say that was his first game. That's what kind of made it special.
Yeah, I'm with you on the half and half scarves as well. I just way too much chat and fuss about that. Atletico Madrid 2, Osasuna 1. The same year, and you want to talk to us about Diego Simeone, especially?
Yeah, so that was a city break that I went on with my mates, and we decided to go to Madrid. And, like, because we were going to Madrid on that particular weekend or whenever it was like, oh, let's try and go to a game. So we really wanted to go to the Bernabeu and really wanted to go and see Real Madrid, but they happened to be playing away. And it's like, just our luck, we don't get to see Real Madrid, and we're going to Madrid, and it was almost like a booper prize of, like, oh well, Atletico are playing at home, let's go and see them. So, like, we weren't that excited, but we went along anyway just to experience it. And the experience in itself was amazing because it was their old Calderon Stadium. So it wasn't the sort of identikit amazing new stadium they've got now. So it had, like, a bit of a old school feel to it. Even to the extent that, like, within the stadium they were selling kind of like homemade baguettes rather than anything packaged, and all the fans were eating these little, I don't know if they were pine nuts or like sunflower seeds or something, but they were all eating them. And if you look down on the sort of, like, stands, it was covered in, like, the shells, and it was little things like that made it so interesting. And there was even, like, amongst their sort of ultras, there was a massive sign that said something like 88 years, and it had, like, obviously a start and end date of, like, somebody who'd passed away. And, like, I was like, oh, like, as a legend died or something. And then got talking to somebody a fan that was there who could speak English, and they explained it was for a supporter who'd been a season ticket holder for, like, 8 decades, and that was amazing that they had that sense of community, that they were acknowledging just a supporter with a massive banner. And the funny thing is, first of all, Atletico Madrid actually won the league that season, so it was the first time they'd done it in years and years, so that made it special. But there's I sent a photo of, like, so we were at the front, and the security wasn't what you'd expect at a top game. Like, it wasn't what it would be at United, and me and my mate sort of got to the front, and Simeone wasn't too far away on the touchline, and because you're on holiday and you're giddy and you sort of think, oh, like you're behaving a certain. I just started shouting his name constantly just to be annoying. I was like, Simeone, over here, Simeone, and like sort of like saying like, are you scared? And then at one point he turned around and he'd heard me, and he started coming towards me. And I absolutely bricked myself. and the image the photo that I've sent to you now, is him coming towards me.
Jesus,
I thought that was like a stock photograph that we had taken. Wow.
No, that's I took that photo just before quickly running up the stand.
What do you think he was coming to say to you?
I have no idea. That was the mad thing. Like, I had no idea he could hear me. And it was just like, what was going to happen? Was he just sick of? Was it like Alan Partridge when he keeps saying Dan, and it was just so annoying that he'd had enough. But like, I panicked and ran away.
I'm angry and I'm not going to take it anymore. In whatever version that he might have said that.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was my memory of the game, and yeah. I mean, the actual game. I mean, it was quite sort of straightforward. I think they won 2-1. Diego Costa scored twice. Yeah. But yeah, that's what I'll remember it for like annoying Simeone and not wanting to be part of that exchange.
Not many people can say they've faced down Diego Simeone for sure. Your last selection.
Neither can Noz.
No. Well, yeah. Tried to. Your last pick, Noz, is similar along the veins of Ferguson's last game at Swansea. It's Arsenal Burnley at the Emirates, 6th of May 2018. Wenger's last home game, 5-0 win anyway for Arsenal.
Yeah. It was his last home game, so it was the big, similar to Fergie. It was the big sort of goodbye that Arsenal were going to give him. And again, like, I think I don't know why I was down in London. It wasn't for the game, but it might have been for work or whatever. But because that game was happening and it was close by to where I was, I kind of like did my best to get a ticket, and by some amazing sort of like I don't know how I did it, but I managed to get a ticket. So I went down, and it was just really interesting to sort of experience that similar situation, but with another club. I mean, one thing that they did things really well. The difference between the Fergie goodbye and the Wenger goodbye is that when Fergie left, it was raining and it was miserable weather. But on Arsene Wenger's last game, it was a beautiful day, really, really sunny, and it was perfect in that respect. And everyone got a T-shirt, and obviously I didn't wear it. I think the two things I got out of it was, I realised that I'm not really a football fan. Like, I couldn't care less about the goals, and I couldn't, like, there was a good atmosphere, and I just thought, like, this is a good atmosphere, but it's not my atmosphere. Like, I think it just sort of cemented to me that I'm a United fan, not a football fan. Like, I can't be a neutral, and I can't like get into the sort of feeling of sort of enjoying someone else's moment. And also the other thing was it was so respectful. And it was so sort of adoring of Wenger, and Wenger was, as ever, was such a gentleman, and his speech was really sort of heartfelt and moving. But the thing I found funny was, like, this, a lot of the same fans had been putting up signs saying like Wenger, it's time to go. Thanks for the trophies, but please do one. Type stuff. And like, I even saw on the way in, these fan sort of these YouTube people doing their like videos outside the ground, and I recognized some of them, and I thought, you've been on his back for ages. You've been so disrespectful, and you've been treating him with such disdain, and now you're sort of enjoying the sort of sentimentality of him leaving. But again, that wasn't sort of that's not Arsenal fans in isolation. I think a lot of fans are just fickle. But yeah, it was just interesting to see that, and yeah, and also the funny thing was that that Wenger's mic kept on putting out, and they had to replace it twice. So I think that was
his career in a microcosm, wasn't it? That was
exactly, yeah. So
the end of days.
But yeah, it was an incredible day. But yeah, I suppose from my point of view, selfishly, at least I can say that I was at two sort of like legendary farewells of like two of the greatest managers of their generation.
Yeah, and have the half and halves to prove it. Really enjoyed that, Noz. Particularly the facing down of Simeone and then legging it was probably my favourite of all of those pieces. People can check out @BeardedGenius on Twitter, including a new book coming soon. So stay tuned, I think, for all of that. And an absolute pleasure to spend the last half hour in your company. Catch up with you again down the track.
All right, see you later.
Cheers. Thanks a lot. That's Noz Choudry, football writer and beyond, and a really interesting list of stuff to get through. Hard pressed for the quality that are there. I think that's in there for it to be matched anywhere else. OTBAM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night edition is available now. On Monday's show, you're going to have the Gillette Labs performance rankings. Alan Quinlan's going to be here. Anthony Moyles will look back in the weekend's Gaelic football. Harriet Pryor as well, and Daniel Harris, both of those on United Liverpool. That's pretty much it. There is some more abuse that has come through around our volley debate, Shane, but I think it's sort of
the usual.
Yeah,
I'm enjoying it.
Old ground at this stage.
Yeah, but I think we touched a topic that has touched the hearts of the nation.
Somebody did say, I'm going to paraphrase, but the more abuse you get on YouTube, the more you raise your game. So keep the abuse coming.
I do like a little bit of vitriol. Yeah. It makes me burn bright inside. It's fantastic.
I'm not sure that's 100% true. That is pretty much it. Kevin Kilbane, we're going to leave you with myself and Colm. Caught up with him yesterday. We're going to chat about the GA football crossover, a little bit about Canada soccer and his hopes for Everton to stay up as well. But from myself and Shane for the minute, have a splendid weekend.
And it's the Egyptian king, Mo Salah, who's done it. What a goal!
It's the biggest game in English football.
Marcus Rashford puts them back in front.
This Sunday, Liverpool take on Manchester United live on Off the Ball.
You have to keep going, take the thing and go again, and that's what we'll do.
You need personality, you need typical character in your squad to win in the end.
Darwin Núñez, who snaps it home for Liverpool.
Join Stephen Doyle and Kenny Cunningham for full live and exclusive radio commentary this Sunday from 4:30.
Scintillating counter-attacking goal.
All right, OTBAM, Friday morning. Kevin Kilbane, good morning to you.
Good morning, Adrian. Good morning, Colm. How you getting on?
Kevin, good morning. Adrian, good morning. Again.
Colm, good morning. Great to see you. Thanks for jumping on.
Thanks for having me.
How's the snow in Canada? Has it eased since we were on to you 2 weeks ago?
No, I actually can't turn the camera. No, we had heavy snow in the last week. We're probably 4 or 5 inches at the moment. We are, fully everywhere. The roads are clear. There's no drama when it does snow. That's the thing, thankfully. But no, we've had a heavy bit of snow, so it is what it is. Till the end of March, probably middle of March at least, we'll be getting a bit more snow, I think, until then.
Now, listen, we like to get you on to chat about football every night, whenever we can get you, Kev, which,
You ask me about the weather every single time you come on. Do you realise that?
Well, I'm trying to find some sort of point of interest to sort of ease our viewers into a conversation with you. That was it. I thought you might be a bit more giving than like sort of a mini weather forecast, to be honest with you.
Well, it's hardly interesting, is it? Let's be honest.
Well, it'd be interesting if you made it interesting. But look, there we go. Come here.
I'm turning into you then, Nama.
I was tipping around in the car the other night, listening to Tuesday nights Off the Ball, and to my surprise, John Malloy introduces a clip from the Football Pod of Kevin Kilbane dissecting the quality of goal taking in the GAA. So we thought, well, we better give you a platform to expand on this a bit, as opposed to just voice notes into the producer. So you've been impressed. Is that the short story?
A little bit. I mean, James Carr is obviously having a great season in terms of goals, isn't he? Certainly in the league, he's scoring 1 or 2 crackers. No, but it was something I'm sure I've brought it up to you, Adrian, when I was more of a regular, when I was on the show with you guys a lot more, going to a lot of games, watching a lot more games as well. And I always felt that there was a lot of chances, one-on-one positions. I think if I'm looking at it in relation from the GAA Gaelic football to soccer, there's a lot more one-on-one chances, I feel, across the course of the game. And the game opens up a little bit, certainly in the second half of matches. And I always felt that when players got one-on-one with the keeper, they were always looking to get that clean strike every single time. And you know yourself, when you get the clean strike, the ball always tends to rise. And I think it gives the keeper the chance. It doesn't have to be, it could be actually a great strike, but the keeper doesn't have to do anything special, I feel, to make the save. And I was always on to Tommy, and I was always on to you lads, say, look, is there ever a way where the lads, think about it a little bit more? And I mean, that might be a bit harsh saying you think about it a bit more, but in terms of coaching one-on-one positions with the goalkeeper, is there a chance of almost trying to allow the ball where it's very close to hitting the deck and then hitting it along the floor, or getting your knee over it to hit it down into the ground, so the keeper's got less of a chance to make that save. And I always felt that was the case. And I was speaking to Tommy in relation to that James Carr goal at the weekend. Brilliant goal in how it was worked. But what James Carr did, he hit it down into the ground and under the goalkeeper. And I felt there's always a chance when you're one-on-one with the goalkeeper in Gaelic football to actually get it under the goalkeeper, or certainly have more of a chance to score if you're in that position. I might be talking absolute rubbish, but Tommy put it to the lads anyway.
I do think you've hit on something interesting as a talking point. Like, I come from a culture of take your point, your goals will come. That was the culture. I mean, I think we're only emerging from that, to be honest, in the last few years. Just in terms of the technique of it, right? Like, I think, so like the key difference, obviously, between football and GAA, soccer and GAA, let's go with that for the purposes of this conversation, is that, in soccer at times, depending on what's going around you might have the opportunity to let the ball do a little bit more of the work and get yourself more physically set, whereas in GAA, you're constantly, obviously, in charge of the ball at all time. It's maybe harder to physically readjust yourself. I mean, I'd
agree with that. No, I'd agree with that. And obviously more bodies in general. But I do feel, though, that the one-on-one chance is more regular in Gaelic football than it is in soccer. That's the way that I would look at it anyway. And
because
that
of the
was
offside rule, it probably...
Yeah, probably a little bit of that. Probably, absolutely. And teams in general, when they're defending a lead, they'll sit in and camp in front of the back four, so in front of the 18-yard box. So you're not really going to get that chance, are you? It's only when the game opens up. If a team's chasing, might be a breakaway from a corner or whatever. So it happens, don't get me wrong, but I think it happens more frequently in Gaelic football. And it's just when I was obviously at games and when I was watching a lot more games, and it was just something that kept on at me all the time to say, well, surely that clean strike that you look for, obviously, and when I'm talking clean strike, sometimes it might be the side volley where you get clean through. If I'm talking like a Lee Keegan special, where it would be, the strike through the ball, cut across the ball. If you look at Dermot O'Connor's goal at the weekend, where he just put his foot through it, just struck it, and the ball rolls into the net, and they look great. They're the ones that look great, don't they? They look like great goals. Whereas James Carr's, the finish itself didn't look great, but it was obviously, it did the job, and it went into the net. And that was what I always felt when watching games, right? And I said it to the lads, where there's got to be a better way when you get one-on-one with a goalkeeper in Gaelic football to finish. I feel, give yourself the chance, unless you're going in one of the corners where you're giving the keeper little chance, where if you don't have time to think, is what you're saying to me there, when you don't really have that much time to think and you've got a lad that's maybe dragging your shirt and pulling you back, I think that's the best option. Then when you're in those positions to actually, I think you can do that. You can actually purposely hit it into the ground when you're under a bit of pressure, because you're not necessarily going to be able to open your foot out and put it in one of the corners.
When you're watching a Mayo match, Kev, can you spot the soccer players?
No, I've never really thought of it like that, actually, Colm. But you can probably tell technique-wise. Another thing that I would have always thought as well with free taking. I think at times free taking off the deck is easier than free taking out of your hand. I think it gives you a chance to actually get a better strike on the ball. That was something else that I thought about. But I think if you look at someone like Cillian O'Connor, who scored so many goals over the years, obviously I'm referencing all the Mayo players here. I'm not referencing Dean Rock or anyone like that, am I? But no, I think someone like him would be predominantly take his frees out of his hand. And that, to me, obviously, as a soccer player, would be alien to me. But that's something that they've grown up with, so it becomes second nature to those lads with free taking. But no, in answer to your question, not really. Would that be something that you would look out for?
Well, I was more interested if that's something you'd look out for because of your own background, that you couldn't help but compare or admire the technique or even just note it. Because I remember when David Bentley, do you remember that a few years ago when he came over to Ireland and played GAA? I don't know if you saw it, Kev, but
I didn't see it. But I remember reading about it anyway. I didn't see it though. No.
Yeah, his first day of training, obviously he just couldn't get over the whole concept of it. Like, he just everyone's a goalkeeper, basically, is the way he saw it. But they were all kind of laughing at his technique because it was just so pure and good, So he was taking free kicks or frees out of his hand in a kind of David Beckham or his own intimate style,
he was probably doing his side foot, looking for the clean strike every time, wasn't he?
Yeah, and it always occurs to me, from the amateur perspective, that I can definitely see a Gaelic footballer who's transitioned to soccer or vice versa.
Yeah.
Just wondering from your own professional life.
No, I mean, I think when you guys have the Gaelic players on, you would always ask what's your soccer team, and invariably they would all, speaking to lads over the years, someone like Paddy Andrews, or speaking to the O'Connors, they're big Man United fans, and Aidan O'Shea's a big Liverpool fan. You speak to some of the lads, and they would be big soccer fans. They would be regularly going over to England across the season as well to try and watch games. Not Mayo, of course, because they're always, there to the bitter end of it. So they wouldn't get the chance to get over and watch games. But you know what I mean? I think in general, I think you would speak to a lot of the guys, and they would always have their favourite soccer team. So I'm sure that they're all playing 7-a-side. I'm sure that they've all played 11-a-side when they're growing up. Another one would be Philly McMahon. He would have been another one. He's a big Everton fan as well. He would have had trials as a kid over in England. I read his book, and he had trials, and he was very close. He would have had to make a decision at some stage. And there's so many Gaelic football players. David Clifford's another one. He's a big Celtic fan, isn't he? So you look at you speak to the guys or hear about the guys, and they all would have played. And I'm sure that a lot of the guys would have played to a great standard themselves.
Even if you're the thing that strikes me from all of that is, even if you are like a student of strikers in soccer, or you're a decent soccer player, like from a technique point of view, it's very difficult to, as you're running with the ball, like one of your biggest things is to try and get the ball away from your body, which in soccer it already is. So you're positioning, the ball is already there. Yeah. It's in a perfect position. You can hit it when you want. Whereas there is that sort of, like, I thought you sort of hit the nail on the head a little bit earlier when you were talking about like that second there's somebody around you dragging, like the number of things to do as you're running with the ball, including trying to get it away from your body, strikes me straight away as not conducive to always trying to. It might be part of the rationale for trying to blast the ball to the back of the net, I suppose.
Yeah, I would think that as well. I think there's probably that old adage of get a clean strike is the most important thing. I think that's probably something that they probably would have been taught us from a young age, isn't it? And invariably, you get the clean strike. As the goals always look so much better when it's a clean strike, isn't it? But I would look at, and it's not even, I'm saying it's not even looking for that. I listened to the pod there with what Paddy and James were saying on it, where they were saying, sometimes in relation to both soccer and GAA, a goal is not always scored in the purest of forms. It can be that miss-hit that goes into corners and it bobbles into the net. But the way I would look at it is it's more of a purposeful hit into the ground. I don't think in generally in football, I know they'd spoke about it, it rarely ever happens where players, I know they spoke about Morris taking penalties, hitting it down into the ground, but that's not what I'm saying. I think in general, I think you want to get that clean strike. I think you can do more with the ball. And if from just in answer maybe to what you're saying, I think you have more time to think. Certainly from free taking, free kicks, penalty taking, if you're looking at that penalty, sort of getting the clean strike on that as well, if I'm looking at it Mara's terms with that bouncing ball type thing that he would have hit in the past. But I think in general, in soccer, you want to open your feet, and you want to, whether it's a side foot whip, whether it's the clean strike that you're looking for. In GAA, you don't necessarily have the luxury of that time once you've opened your feet, because you know full well that you are being dragged. And my reasoning would be on that one-on-one with the goalkeeper, just in how I'd see it is, I think you've actually got more of a chance to actually hit it into the ground, because if you've got someone on, say I've got someone on my right side and I'm trying to use my left foot to get a strike away, I'm holding the guy off, or I'm trying to keep the guy away from the ball, and then I'm trying to get my strike where it's going to be going into the ground almost, And I think, I think it's probably an easier skill to get a strike off doing that. Personally, I would think that's an easier skill.
It's easier to execute that skill in which sport? In
GAA. In GAA. Because you're under pressure, you're not necessarily going to be able to get that clean strike anyway. So it's almost, as long as your thought process is get my knee, get the leg over the ball, so you're going to hit down on the ball, you're going to hit it into the ground anyway. And I think I think if that's in your mindset when you're working on that constantly, when you in general, they're absolute machines, aren't they, the lads? So the way that they train, I think it's something that you can educate your brain to do.
Ozil was the example that Joe rightly brought up on the show the other night.
That was the one. It's a great shout. Actually. Yeah, it was.
Can't claim ownership of it. But yeah, I do think I definitely would have noticed, I think the quality of and we need to talk to you about Everton and Canada, and we'll do that now. But I do think the quality of goal attempts in GA has improved an awful lot over the last few years.
Yeah, I'd agree.
I think Donaghy's chat with us about the what Colm Cooper had said to him about not trying to blast it, try and place it into the back of the net. Yeah. I think that sort of stuff. I think the Mulligan goal, I mean, that's over 10 years, more than that. 2005, is it that far back? Probably helps shift the narrative a little bit as well. I do think there is.
What about Enda Hessian's goal at the weekend? No, did you like that one?
The drop.
That was class, eh?
Nice.
The drop, beautiful. Keeper's gone.
Yeah,
great.
That's
Shane Curran, mind you, made a good point about the keeper not. That's a whole other conversation about the keeper not being properly set.
Well, he committed him though. He committed him with body language alone, Adrian.
Yeah,
I thought you'd appreciate it.
Everton are too good to go down. I'm paraphrasing, but that was pretty much what you told us the last time we were on a couple of weeks back. And I mean,
did I say that? No, I don't think I said that. I said they'd be in trouble, serious trouble if they went down. I don't think they're too good to go down. Never. I don't think I would have said that. You're paraphrasing again. You're actually looking for an answer.
Yeah, it's poor. Yeah. It's poor. It's poor.
You're looking for an answer.
I'll be absolutely honest. I did go looking for the YouTube track about 5 minutes before we came on air, but then you came on early and I didn't get a chance to cut the exact quote. So I appreciate that.
I think Everton have got a strong squad, but I think they're in with probably 10 or 12 other Premier League teams that could go down, and that's the way that's.
You're more encouraged, I presume, since Dyche is there, or no?
I watched. I didn't see the Arsenal game actually the other night. Obviously, bad defeat, heavy defeat. I watched the Leeds game the other week, and they beat Leeds obviously 1-0. The Seamus Coleman goal, great goal by the way as well.
Great goal,
and he meant it, which was great. Yeah, great goal. But it was more the fact is it was actually quite a poor game. I thought honestly, I thought Everton were never really in trouble through the game. Leeds didn't really offer an awful lot. I didn't feel, and I felt Everton were comfortable. But it was almost as if Leeds were actually just trying to get a point from the game. Just come away from Goodison with something. Do not lose this game, and that's ultimately what I felt cost them. I didn't see Everton really being a side that were really on the front foot. Sorry, my father-in-law's just calling me there. No, I didn't see Everton being a side that were really on the front foot, really a side that was full of confidence. There was a little bit of negativity coming from sections of the supporters. You could hear that with one or two mistakes that was being made, and that's understandable given the position that they're in. I'd feel, but I wasn't. I never felt, even with winning that game, I thought, this is it obviously was a great result, but I never felt, Everton are out of the trouble now. Sean Dyche has really turned it around. They're going to go on now and beat sides. That's the way that I felt on it anyway. So it's, and the last two results have maybe proved that. I just think Everton are in serious trouble at the moment. Serious trouble. I know the position says that, but I think a lot of the players are still inhibited. I think there's nervousness around the play when they're going forward, and I just hope that's not going to be the thing that's going to come back to haunt them, because I don't feel Sean Dyche's mantra through management has always been solid foundations. Get the back four right, or whichever system Everton are going to play going forward. Get the system right, and that's from back to front. That is everybody back behind the ball when they don't have it. And I'm looking at Everton right now, and I just think, where's the goals going to come from? Where's this real creativity spark going to come from? And it's killing me. It is killing me watching them. I have to say that right now.
But even defensively as well, Kev, like if you look at the Everton results in Sean Dyche's first game, so that was a great start, 1-0 against Arsenal, who were absolutely brilliant all season. Then the Merseyside derby, they were very poor, 2-0 against Everton. They had the 1-0 win against Leeds, which was all Seamus Coleman, of course, great goal. Then very disappointing last two games. Lost 2-0 at home to Aston Villa and then 4-0 the other night against Arsenal. If you weren't paying attention for the last few weeks, you might assume that Frank Lampard is still in charge if you just looked at the results. Has Sean Dyche made a positive difference from what you've seen?
You know what? I think that's honestly, you couldn't say that that's not a fair comment. What you say, I don't think much has changed. I think they got the initial spark. I think it was a good performance against Arsenal and a grinding performance. I think it was something that they didn't necessarily have under Lampard for a while, where they were able to just to grind out a result, not necessarily playing well or playing great, but get the result, get over the line. They proved that against Leeds. I'm not saying Everton were awful against Leeds. That's not what I'm saying, because I think there's a lot to be said about getting results when you're not necessarily at the top of your game. And I don't think Everton are going to be at the top of the game really until the end of the season, because it's going to be about grinding every single week and getting results. That's something that Sean Dyche's sides have been used to over the years, or used to doing over the years. We've seen his Burnley sides get results when they've not necessarily been playing well or not necessarily been expected to get results. And I think that might be the way this season. Just get over the line, get the job done. But as I said, I didn't see the Arsenal game, but I know it was a poor result, obviously, from seeing it. But you kind of read clips from it or read reports from it, and it was the defending. And that's something that, as you say, it's the same as how it was a few months ago or a month ago under Lampard. Nothing much has changed there. And that's going to be a process over a certain amount of time. That's not going to change overnight.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just a Gay's mistake for Saka's goal. For Martinelli's goal against Arsenal. It was just, he was dawdling. I mean, that's 101 for Sean Dyche. It's just unacceptable. But, if you look through that squad, Kev, they should be better than what they are, shouldn't they? I mean, they have a decent spine.
Yeah. Well, that's maybe going back to Adrian's point before when I said they're too good to go down, which I didn't say that, but I said that the squad and I'm more going to the point, Colm, on what they were actually paying in wages. Obviously, we all know the transfer fees, but Everton's wage bill, as I said, I've said it a few times now, that they were paying, or they were able to compete financially, certainly across the board with Arsenal. They were able to compete financially with Spurs over the last 6 or 7 years. That's the way that it's been since Farhad Moshiri went into Everton. The wage bill at Everton is astronomical. That's what led to having to sell Richarlison and the financial difficulties that they had last summer, where it was the financial fair play was a problem for Everton. Everton weren't actually adhering to the Premier League rules, and that was ultimately what came back to bite them in having to sell Richarlison. So I think overall, if you look at what they spent, and that was where I was going, yes, they absolutely should be in a better position. And the calibre of players that they signed, they should be in a better position. But I've played for teams, Colm, where it doesn't necessarily transcend. I always think back to the days when I was at Sunderland, and everybody said at the time, we're too good to go down. You've got too good a side. And we went down just due to the fact was that it was a grind when we were playing at the Stadium of Light. The team struggled playing there. We couldn't get the results because one bad pass went astray in the first 5 or 10 minutes of the game. They felt the groans from the supporters, me too. And it was difficult, I think, for the players to get through each 90 minutes playing your normal game, because I think we were feeling the heat from the supporters. And I think that's the way it is at Everton right now.
Are you in touch with Seamus Coleman?
No, I'm not. No, I see him here and there, but no, I haven't seen him in a while. So no, I'm not in contact with him, no.
We want to. They've Forest and Brentford coming up, and I mean they're not they're far from sort of giving me results at all. But vital.
I mean, the thing is, you look at it though, don't you? Look at it and you think, well, Forest and Brentford, but Forest form is being excellent. Yeah. Forest are safe, more or less safe now. Brentford they're looking upwards. They're looking top half. So, I mean, realistically, the way things are going for Everton, both those sides, Forest and Brentford, will be favourites for the games.
Talk to us about Canada soccer. It's anybody who's paying any sort of a passing attention to it at all is in turmoil at the minute. Men's and women's teams both in dispute with the governing body. Obviously, the women's team are going to play Ireland in Perth in the World Cup on July 26th. They're talking about the boycott possibly of a camp there next month. They were on a strike recently, but then Canada Soccer threatened to sue them, so they didn't. And the men's team obviously you talked about it last year, their own pay dispute around the World Cup as well, with payments there. And all of these things are very familiar to an Irish audience, I'm sure, as well. President resigned, I think, in the last few days. Is it nearing any? He certainly talked a great game in his resignation notes. Is it nearing a resolution, Kev, or what's the story?
Well, Nick Bontis, who you speak about there, resigned as president of Canada Soccer, but he'd already got his position within CONCACAF. He's vice president now of CONCACAF. So he's gone on to, obviously, a paid job. It's an unpaid job. It's a volunteer's role or voluntary role, president of Canada Soccer, which it shouldn't be. There's no accountability then, is there? I'd feel you're the head of a federation that's got a huge turnover every year, and you have to have accountability when you're dealing with the numbers, the financial implications that's going in there. So both the men and the women Women's sides have had issues. Underage sides have had issues. There's been scandals over here as well, within the women's game as well in the last 10 or 15 years that has been highlighted and off the ball as well. There's a number of issues around the team, and it's not going to go away. I think you're asking now, with Nick Bontis going, does it look likely like it's coming to an end? And I can't see it coming to an end. No, there's so much to be done. Both the men and the women I think I'm right in saying they have agreed pay parity. So there's going to be the same match fee for both men and women, which is probably being a given now across international the international game. It should be there now. It shouldn't even be an issue. But also they're agreeing. They did agree last summer on the World Cup win bonuses, where they shared each other's win bonuses as well. Which obviously, with the men qualifying for Qatar, the women were due a big big payment from that as well, which was the same with the US. The US have got that in place. But there's a long way to go, it seems, Adrian, a really long way to go. They're on about cutting the budget in terms of preparation for games. The women, obviously, as you say, they've got the World Cup coming up. They play us. With that, that'll be a huge game. Obviously, a big game for Ireland, given Canada's ranking in world football right now and what they've achieved coming into the World Cup, one of the favourites as Olympic champions. So there's a long way to go, Adrian. There's been issues for such a long time. Numerous issues. There's financial issues regarding where money is being filtered to from the game, going back into various avenues. There's so much to get into, Adrian, that it'd be so hard for me to really nail down exactly what it is. But just by Nick Bontis resigning, this issue is not going to go away for both the men and the women's games. Given what the women have achieved as well over the last 10 or 15 years, and given the ranking and given how well they're thought of across the game, they feel they've been mistreated on numerous occasions. And as I said, they probably deserve so much more respect than they've been given by many people within the game over here.
Yeah, go on, Colm. Sorry,
I was just going to say, Adrian, it sounds like the issues have at least been acknowledged at a basic level, Kev. But for you, is it still being talked about sufficiently enough, or does it need to dominate the agenda more? Not just across the sporting news in Canada, but news overall.
Well, I think it seemed to come to a head before the World Cup, the men's World Cup over in Qatar, Colm, and that's the way it seemed to be. It looked like there was some sort of agreement that was coming into place, but that went out the window. Recently, we saw on TV Christine Sinclair, the women's international record goal scorer of all time. She has come out and she was the one that was publicly slamming Canada Soccer. This is what Adrian was talking about before. They threatened to strike going into the She Believes Cup. This is still potentially, it could happen down the line. The men went on strike last summer. They missed an international game last summer. Clearly, there's a lot of issues. And it's not just, everyone thinks it's about a financial issue. You know, obviously pay parity across both men and women's sides of the game seems to be there's something that everybody's talking about. It's not that. It's actually the money that's going into, as I said, preparation for international games. It seems like we're talking in terms of hotels for the players. We're talking about kit for the players. You know, it's ringing a bell on so many different levels for what we've heard coming from our own organisation over the last 10 or 15 years, isn't it? The women's game has been treated very, very differently from the men's game. And the men feel they've been mistreated also. So there's Colm, there's so many issues. You said it's been spoken about, and that is a good thing. I think, with the men qualifying for Qatar, first time since 1986, I think they were able to create a platform for the talking points to come out and really raise serious issues against Canada Soccer and how they were doing things. But I think there's, just by Nick Bontis going away, it almost seems like it's got to be a root and branch change absolutely across the whole of Canada Soccer for the players to actually change the mentality. That's got to be the thing, but also the supporters now, because the supporters are actually starting to realise what has happened. And I go back even to my time playing, Colin. There were so many Canadian players that just didn't want to play for the country. They wouldn't even bother getting on a plane to fly back to play because of the preparation, because of how they felt they were being treated. So this is not now in the last 6 months or last year. This is historical. This is what's gone on for such a long time.
definitely shades of. I was listening to Emma Byrne on with Graham Hunter, big podcast recently, and it just reminded me of all that stuff that went on at that time around their own dispute, obviously, that they had with the association. There's obviously a possibility as well that this binds the players together in a big way ahead of the World Cup, which might be a net loss for us, but I think everybody would be.
I fancy us to take them. Really? I fancy us to take them. Yeah. Big scout for the Irish girls.
Our CNBC XZLR 127 sending you out?
No, I'm not. I'm not covering it at all. I'm doing nothing for it. No. But I'll be looking forward to it. I don't know what time will it be Irish time? Those games, they're going to be early hours here. I think 3 and 4 in the morning. I think it's not going to be great for watching.
11 hours ahead. So for AM,
7 a.m., 8 a.m.
Yeah, it'll be like early evening. So you could come on, Kev. Could.
Come on with a Colm, the producer Colm.
It's a good idea, Kev. That's not a bad idea at all. No, I do miss you. I do miss you from November. I must say.
I know. We used to have a good chat before we were
building something, and then it all ended. You know.
Well, it's down to the execs and off the ball.
Listen, we'll have to have a separate chat. Yeah.
I've been waiting for. I've been waiting for the lads to ask me to come on for a long time, but it's almost as if. Anyway, I just take it like a pinch of salt. Easily forgotten as far as I'm concerned.
Talk about fake news. Kev, come on. Thanks a million.
Thanks very much. Cheers, guys. Thanks, lads.
Cheers.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
OTB